We are brought to you by Boss Bears Supplements. That's Boss Bears Supplements at bossbears.co. Hard work, consistency, and determination are difficult to sustain when your mind and body can't keep up. Fuel your body with what it needs to perform like a boss. Whether you're closing deals, pitching a new business idea, or training in the gym, Boss Bears take your hustle to the next level. Our ingredients are the highest quality with potency and serving sizes that are the gold standard in the industry. Check out all of Boss Bears products at bossbears.co. They have apple cider vinegar gummies. They have ashwagandha. They have all kinds of supplements in delicious gummy form. They also have them in pill form if you don't want the gummies. I prefer the gummies. They are delicious, and I've tried the apple cider vinegar. They are very good. Use code Nicky at checkout to save 10%. That's bossbears.co, code Nicky. We are brought to you by Clout Power Supplements. That's KLOUTPWR.com. So here I have the protein, the Cravings protein from Clout. This one is the salted caramel. This is some of the best protein that I've ever had in my life. It's actually delicious. I like the salted caramel and the cinnamon swirl are my two favorites. Also, their pre-workouts are amazing. So they have the Karma Nootropic pre-workout. It's a nootropic and focused pre-workout. It's a lower stimulant formula, zero itch formula. It has 4 trademark ingredients, and has fully dosed ingredients. So far, the Arctic Cherry is probably my favorite of the Karma pre-workout. Also, try the Nero Aminos from them. And also the High Stimulant Mamba is some of my favorite too. And I really like the Arctic Cherry of that one. So go to cloutpower.com and use code Nicky to save 15%. KLOUTPWR.com. Code Nicky to save 15%. All right, everybody, welcome to the Nicky Free Podcast. I'm here with Barb Honchak.
Yeah.
Honchak, yes.
Good.
And Barb is a former mixed martial artist and former Invicta Flyweight Champion, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Invicta was one of the promotions that promoted women's MMA exclusively, correct?
Yeah, I mean, there were kind of waves. There were different promotions before Invicta. Strike Force was the big, like Bodog and Strike Force back in the day were two of the promotions that were pretty big names that had most of the weight classes for women.
Okay.
And pretty much right when I quit my professional career to become a professional fighter, Strike Force folded.
Right.
And in that same year, Invicta
Started
up, yeah.
So back, and what year was that? You started around what, 2012?
Oh my God.
Because you went
to
to
Wikipedia.
So you went to college first, correct? And you had you got your degree. What was your degree in?
So I have a bachelor's degree in molecular biology from Western.
Yeah, that's
right here in Washington, and then I have a master's degree in ecological genetics from Northern Arizona University.
Oh, so is that how you ended up here in Washington?
My first time out here, that's how I ended up in Washington. Yeah, I came to go to Western.
Okay, is that where you met the husband too then?
No, we were both in community college together in Illinois before that.
Because you're originally from Illinois.
Yes.
Okay, so then you came out here to go to college.
Yeah.
But then you ended up getting married and everything.
Yeah, so I got into Western and he came out with me and got in the following semester.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And so then it wasn't like you had no plans of fighting, correct?
Oh, no, zero.
Yeah.
No.
So it was like you were like 26 when you first started training.
Yeah.
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 So what was it that compelled you to it? You just started, it was like, so I read on your Wikipedia, basically and I don't know how true Wikipedias
Sure.
are. They can be pretty, but it said that you had taken a class or something or gotten into jiu-jitsu, and then that's where that all spawned from?
So when I was in my master's program, one of my roommates was really into watching the UFC.
Yes.
And that was my first introduction to it at all.
Okay.
And we'd been living in Washington and Arizona in places with snowboarding and mountain biking and like all these amazing outdoor sports. And then my husband's school took us back to St. Louis area where we're from, and he started a program. And we were kind of like, well, there's no mountains here. What do you want to do? I started running. I was attempting to be a marathoner. I'm not a runner. I'm terrible at it. But he started jiu-jitsu under Steve Berger in St. Louis.
Yes.
And he kept getting injuries.
Okay.
Broken toes, broken fingers, popped ribs, like all the injuries. And while he was out with one of his rib injuries, I was running in the city parks around St. Louis by myself with just me and my dog. And he was like, do you want to try to take over my contract while I'm healing? And I was like, yeah, sure. And so he asked Steve if I could come in.
Oh, so he had the contract there at the gym.
He was the one that got into it. Right. And so he asked the coach, he's like, hey, can my wife, fill in for me and keep my contract rolling with you guys so she can learn some self-defense for when she's running.
Well, because that is dangerous if you think about it. I think about that all the time. Like here, so even like I was at the tanning salon the other day because I'm one of those like gym bros that likes to go tan and everything, and we're living in Washington. And
yeah, you got a great tan.
And I've been, it's like an old habit because I was in professional wrestling, so it's like you just like learn, like try to be in shape, try to be tan, like anything that's going to get you like to the top of the card or whatever,
sure.
So like it became this habit with me, and now, I'm into lifting and stuff, so I still do it. And like to me, it feels good in Washington where it's dark all the time.
Oh yeah, I've gotten tanning bed things before.
Right, because it kind of makes you like peps you up a little bit.
Yeah, a little vitamin
it's like
D.
A little warmth, and you do get vitamin D from it. But my point is, to your point, there's some really nice people that work there, and one of the girls was working there, and she's telling me about some of these like clients that come in that are kind of creepy, and she's like a young like 20-some-year-old girl, I don't know, 25, 26 or something, and she's like, yeah, sometimes there's like these creepy older dudes that come in and they just talk to me and I don't know what to do, and like, so I think like, and they're there by themselves.
Yeah. So
she's like got to close this tanning place, it's like it's kind of creepy, so it's like I feel like any kind of self-defense, and I have some friends who have been on this podcast who are into studying Muay Thai, and that's like their big thing is like trying to get more women to take self-defense, just like, just to be safe.
Yeah, and even in the last year, I've gone to friends of mine who are business owners and have a bunch of young girls. Like one of them's a Shirley Bird Cafe in Bellingham.
Right.
And I went up and sat with her and her girls and just talked we had maybe 2-3 hours of hanging out. But the first hour we just talked, and they were telling me about all the weird things people say and do to them, grabbing them, touching them, and things like that.
I work in a bar, so I've seen it all.
Yeah.
Guys, we get it too, but we're not as like scared. It's not.
Sure.
Yeah, if some like lady makes me feel uncomfortable, it's not like I feel like,
or even
scared.
If a guy comes up to you, like.
Yeah, but if you're a smaller guy, I guess you could feel the same thing.
Totally.
True. So
Yep.
That is a good point.
So we sat and they gave me all of their experiences, no, not all, but a lot of their experiences in the area, and then we sat and did some real basic self-defense things with them, and also talked about mindset, like being okay with being aggressive to somebody who's aggressive to you.
Right, because it's not something natural.
Right, a lot of young girls don't feel like that's something that's okay to do.
Well, and I've seen it where like, and I think some guys do this too, I'm not going to be sexist or anything, but like I've seen where girls will like give their number to a guy not even wanting to, but just not wanting to make things uncomfortable.
Yeah, because guys get pissed.
Yeah, so they,
and
it's like then afterwards we had to like, I'm like, are you serious? I'm like, give me your phone. We're going to text him right now. So we come up, and this other girl helped us too. We text the guy back like, look, because he texts like, hey, do you want to hang out? And it was to this other girl. She never intended on giving him her number, but she didn't know what to do in the situation. And she just didn't know how to, basically didn't, it's like this thing where you don't want to be mean to people.
Right.
So you'd rather just like,
It's the de-escalation.
Yeah, so it's like we had to like text him back like, no, I just didn't know what to do. I really don't want to hang out outside of work at all. Like we tried to do it in a nice way so it wouldn't be rude to him either, but to get her out of it because she didn't know what to do. And,
sure.
But I think you're right. Like just that idea that people don't know how to, I don't know, people are so scared of being like,
hurting someone's feelings
Yeah,
or
being
something.
mean to somebody who's being mean to them.
Right.
Yeah, because it can escalate.
And so before that, you were just into athletics, but just kind of like what other sports?
I would not say I was ever athletic before I got
Really?
into. Yeah, I mean, I would run. I would do things to stay in shape. I'd lift.
Just kind of like into being active.
Yeah, a lot of outdoor stuff. My whole family were scuba divers, so I did a lot of snorkeling and diving as a kid.
Yeah.
I had a horse as a kid, so it was stuff like that. Snowboarding, mountain biking, road biking, more individual type things like that.
Right.
In high school, I did do track and soccer, but I was terrible at all of them.
Yeah, yeah. But so this was the kind of like the first time where, so you go to this class.
Yeah.
And then you start getting introduced to this thing. And then how did that go from that into, was it you deciding I really like this, or was it somebody else like, look, you have a natural talent for this? Or like, how did that?
So my coach, later in life, confessed that he was like, she's not going to last 2 weeks here. And he was not a fan of women in the sport at the time either.
Because this was back when that was still like,
Oh yeah, there
some
weren't very
people are
many
like,
of us.
women shouldn't fight.
Well, and there weren't very many of us. Men
Yeah.
shouldn't hit girls, stuff like that. And that was a problem in training at some places too, is like guys getting yelled at by their girlfriends for hitting me, or girlfriends not wanting their guy to roll
Well,
around
to be
with
close
me.
with another
Yeah.
girl, like rolling. Yeah.
Or they would just take it easy. So, well, back to the beginning, but no. So I was in it took maybe a month, maybe 2 months. I don't even remember anymore. Before I would do live rolls, so I would come in and do the technique part of it, and then bow out when they would do live rolls. So it took me a couple of months to get comfortable enough to start doing the live rolls.
And this was jujitsu.
Jiu-jitsu, yeah, I started with jiu-jitsu. The gym had everything. It had jiu-jitsu and kickboxing and wrestling. It had full MMA.
Yeah.
But I was in the jiu-jitsu program there specifically.
Okay.
And about 6 months in, there was a promoter. There was another girl in the area who had a boxing background, and she was looking for an MMA fight. And the promoter came up to me and asked, he's like, or well, I guess asked my coach, he's like, do you think she would ever want to fight? So they asked me, and I talked to my, well, at the time, my fiance.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've never been at that point, I'd never been in a fight in my life, except for, you know, like kicking my feet at my sister or something like that.
Yeah.
So there was a piece of me that I just kind of was like, well, I kind of want to know if I could. So I talked to my husband about it. The fight was 1 week before our wedding.
Oh my God.
But I was like, do you care if I have a black eye or whatever? And he's like, no. So I took the fight, and the only visible marks, I got poked in the eye, so I had a sclera, like the
So you had your
bruise in the
first
eye.
fight a week before your wedding.
Yeah, but we were together 10 years at that point,
Right,
and
so
we were
you-
planning a really small, like we went to a beach in California and had a really small wedding.
I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
even like my coach, bodybuilding coach, and his wife just got married, and they've been together a while too. And they like went somewhere and did it with just the pastor.
Yeah.
And then they kind of had their party like later. And I'm like, that is a way to do it.
We actually crashed one of my friend's 30th birthday parties. A group of our friends were already getting together for his birthday, and we're like, do you think he would be mad if we stole his thunder and got married while we're all there? And then some of our parents flew out, and we had just a really small, very easy, last-minute wedding out on the beach. It was good. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so like he obviously was like, sure, you know.
Yeah, he didn't care.
He was cool with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no black eye or anything for the wedding.
Just the eye
so-
poke. My husband did have a black eye. He was helping me get ready because he was in the program too at the time.
Now, he was a fan of this before, right? Or was this just something he was doing kind of for fun?
Exercise and fun. It was
And
kind
it was
of,
probably kind of just getting really popular at that time.
yeah.
More so a
It
lot
was
of...
that was still back where you know, like it wasn't as mainstream, and all the fighters didn't have all the skills. Like you had your people who came from wrestling camps or boxing camps or even karate
Yeah.
camps. You
What
know,
year
like,
was it? No, you're right, because it did used to be more like that, right? You'd have like different... And that kind of made it exciting. Now everybody's so well-rounded, you know, like they might come from one background. And I haven't been following much UFC lately. later we'll get into when you were on the Ultimate Fighter. I still remember watching like the first season of that, like back in college, I think. So you can't remember what year you got married?
What year I got married?
Oh, you're thinking of like when you first got into it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We've been together. What year was it? We just had our 15-year wedding anniversary.
Oh, yeah. So it was like, yeah,
15 years ago. So, yeah.
Right. So 2007-ish era.
Thanks for doing the math.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So early 2000s.
No, that makes sense because that's when it was like starting to pick up steam. Everybody was like walking around in like affliction shirts.
Oh, yeah.
And like,
yeah.
I mean, when I say everybody, I mean like me. You know, like, but yeah, that was like, it was so cool. You know, like that was when it first started blowing up.
Yeah.
But I think everybody's just gotten so much better and better now that it's
everybody has everything, at least a bit of it. Yeah, you have to.
Do you have any favorite? So back then, were there any female fighters that you could even look up to?
There were a few. There was the show, like I forget the name of the show, but there was a reality show that would do, I think it was just kickboxing, and they had kind of similar to Tough, but I remember Felice Herrig being on that show, so I knew who she was.
Okay.
And like when I got into the sport, there were a lot of names, like Julie Kedzie was a big name before I was in there. Gina Carano was in it at that time.
I even know her name as well.
Yeah, so there were a few standouts. Misha Tate was still pretty young in the sport, but she was in it then.
So she was already in it. Yeah, that name I know for sure.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that name.
Yeah, so there's, quite a few that were in it all the way up into the UFC, kind of brought all the females in.
But you were around in that same era. That's really cool.
I'm an OG.
You are an OG, for real. And like, look at where, it's pretty impressive where, women's MMA has come.
Oh, yeah.
And, like I said, I did pro wrestling, so I try not to always go back to that, but I always end up
There's
doing it.
a lot of similarities.
Well, it's so similar because, like, women couldn't... There were some amazing women in pro wrestling that were super good, back in the day, but then there was also, like...
Controversy.
Well, most of the time they just made you go out in your bra and panties and, like, run around giggling and,
right.
like, just eye candy. So it's like... They had to fight to get it to where it is now.
Yeah.
And now it's like a thriving part of their business.
Yeah,
so
there's crossover too. There's women that were in the UFC that, like Shayna Baszler and a few others that crossed over from MMA over to pro wrestling.
I think there's more of that now than ever, for sure. Even like Matt Riddle, he used to be a fighter.
Yeah, yep.
But obviously the biggest name is Ronda Rousey.
Yeah.
She's like really transitioned over, and I think until she decided to have a kid, she was in WWE still.
She was. I didn't know that she wasn't still, but
she might be back in now.
I have no idea.
But anyway, so back to your story. So it starts out with self-defense.
Yeah.
And then this person comes up to your coach and says, would she ever want to fight? And then where does it go from there?
So we agreed I walked about 125 pounds back then, and I'm almost back to that now. But when I was in the main of my career, I was way bigger. So we agreed at a weight at 125. And I had no idea what I was doing, any of it. I was probably 120, 122. So, we went out to breakfast and I ate food, went into weigh-ins, weighed in, made it just fine, even though I've eaten.
Right. Had no idea about like dieting or
no, not yet. She had weight cut.
Cutting,
I got in. Yeah, totally. And so we did our weigh-in thing and went back the next day and had our fight. And the first round, so let me back up a little bit. I had just started kickboxing when they asked me if I wanted to take this fight. So I had no hands, no idea what to do standing up.
Right.
I only knew what to do on the ground.
So how long had you been doing jiu-jitsu at this time?
About 6 months.
6 months, yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, we went to the fight. I was terrified. I had no idea what, anything was about. In my head, it was the UFC. I had no idea, but it was just like a little venue out in the boondocks where we had to walk through cigarette smoke and everybody was drinking and, more like VFW style.
Yes, just a VFW hall. I can completely relate.
She completely kicked my ass in the first round. But I could feel that she was getting tired. So I went back to my corner and again later she was like, I don't know what I'm about to say to this girl. Like she's getting her ass kicked. But I went back to the corner and I sat in my stool and I was like, she's getting tired. And Steve just agreed. He's like, yeah, she's getting tired.
So you could kind of just feel it, right? You could tell.
Yeah, and I was in really good shape. Like, I wasn't a very good fighter yet, but I was in great shape.
Right.
And then the second round, she came out, probably because she was tired. She took me to the ground where I took her back and choked her out rear naked.
And once you were on the ground, you had some jiu-jitsu to fall back
I was
on.
I felt at least competent enough to take the fight on the ground.
That is so exciting. So, like, when you say that you were in shape already, was that just naturally you had just already been in shape, or was that something that you had been working on with your coaches?
Yeah, so I was already running before any of this, so I already had okay cardio, and then the gym also had lifting areas and cardio machines and things like that. So we conditioned.
I was gonna say, so when you're talking about in shape, like what kind you're talking about? You had good cardio and you'd been doing some strength training.
Mostly cardio.
So your motor was good.
Yeah.
So when you said I could feel her getting tired, even though you were getting your ass kicked, you're scared, you don't really know what's going on. It's your first time. I'm sure it was overwhelming.
Oh yeah, and just adrenaline through the roof. So.
But you had been working on that cardio, so that meant that you were probably able to stay kind of calm in that situation.
Yeah, and all my grappling partners were men, so I'm
used to stronger.
Okay. Right, so there's strength training in that when you're grappling, and then I'd pick up a weight or two also.
Yeah, but if you're grappling with a bunch of guys that are bigger than you, like
that's weight training.
Yeah. So you had been prepared for this, kind of.
Yeah, I mean they did as much as they could. To get me ready for it.
And so then what happened in the fight?
So the second round, she decided to take me to the ground, and I...
Like you said, rear naked?
Yeah, I got to her back and got a rear naked choke and stood up and squealed and ran to my corner, and he was like, I've never had a fighter squeal before. I was like, well, you got a girl now.
Okay, so you were just so excited, whatever noise just came out.
Yeah, I guess. I don't really remember, but I remember him saying something
squealed,
about it.
Okay, yeah. No, that is so cool. So was that kind of the moment when you decided you wanted to do that more? Was it like so exciting that it just...
Yeah, I think immediately I was like, okay, when's the next one? Yeah.
Yeah, when you get a taste of something.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure there was so much adrenaline. And...
Oh, yeah, just excitement, and then you have like a high for the next week, walking around and going into the gym, and people are like, hey, atta girl, and you're like, yay, atta me,
Yeah, you get a little bit of like positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
You found something that you're kind of good at, and... So then how did that transition into more and more fights? How did that lead up to this? And the Invicta thing started, you said there wasn't a lot of places for women to go.
Yeah, well, so Bodog, at that time, like my first fight time, Bodog was there and Strikeforce were the two big names that still had women. And then Bodog folded... and there were local shows that would have pro fights.
Kind of more like VFW type stuff, like you said.
Or halls. They'd rent nicer places, casinos, things like that. There's also King of the Cage. I don't know if that one, but that was like that's still a promotion that goes on. They do a lot of their stuff at reservations, and then the rules are, a little sketch. But, so, yeah, there were other places. And then, Jeff Osborne also promoted an all-female card, and he was local. He was in Indiana. G-Fight, he called it G-Fight, and he would do female grappling tournaments and pro shows and things like that. And so he was also he was a promoter before the UFC started promoting. So he'd been in the game a long, long, long time, and had a lot of big names that you'd recognize if I had the brain to pull them up.
Yeah.
But he was local and had a huge show too. But mostly it just snowballed. It was one fight after another. The promoters caught wind that there was another girl they could pull for their the token girl fight on.
Well,
the card.
because like when you're a promoter and that's the time when that's something that's just starting.
Yeah.
It's just like wrestling. Like if the promoter's like, there's a girl that wants to do this. Like and no offense, but she could even be like lazy, not doing shit. And it's like if it's a girl, like she's on the show.
Well, the women in the crowd love it. All the girlfriends and wives of whoever, they love seeing the girl fights. So yeah.
Well, it was just so rare back then that it was like this is a commodity that we need to have on our show because we want to be something different than the competition.
Yeah.
So it's like.
So at that time, it was still just a fun thing to do. I was working at a university at the time too. I managed a research lab that had multiple labs, but I was working at a university, and so this started happening. I started having fights. I started getting black eyes and staph infections and things that I had to like kind of try to cover up to go into work with.
So you're like basically a biologist?
Yeah.
And fighting. So like
at the same time. And I did personal training in the morning at that time. So
you were training people?
Yeah, I would get up super early, do some personal training, go to the job at the university, and then at night I'd go train.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so
now what was that like, just all day being on like that? Were you feeling it you were just kind of like, you were like all in at the time, weren't you? Like,
yeah, I mean, all I wanted to do throughout the day was get to the gym, kind of, but
that's all you thought about.
Yeah, like in the morning I would have personal training. If I had a gap, I would do my own conditioning and then I'd go to my real job, I guess, my grown-up job.
That's the job that paid the bills.
Right, and then
But you had started getting a passion for this.
Yeah, well, and it was fun, and it was a release, and honestly, like, I think part of the reason that I was so drawn to it is I've always been a super high anxiety person, and when you're training, I don't know, but when you're training, your brain, like, you can't focus on anything but not dying, you're like, don't let them kill me, or you're like, focused on killing them, so in that, at least that 2-hour window, your brain's like just quiet.
It's a mental health therapy.
Yeah, and so I think that had a huge element in it too.
I mean, that's like every gym bro, like the hour or two that they're in the gym, it's like relief.
Yeah. From
whatever mental illness they have going. It's like, so it is. It's like, and it's, I don't know, it's something that gives you like, it just makes sense, like you're moving your body. You're getting these endorphins. It's like a natural antidepressant or like anti-anxiety.
And it's like, not even when I would run, I would be in my head the whole time. But here, I have to focus on somebody trying to hurt me. So it was,
your brain literally can't.
No, it's only focused on not getting that punch or hitting them or taking them down or not getting taken down. So there was like nothing outside of the gym happening in my mind, and it was really nice.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense to me, and I just, it's cool that you found that. Like, it's almost like it just, like, naturally happened somehow. That just, like, because who would have thought? Would you have thought that when you were younger?
No. I have some friends that, later they're like, yeah, I could see it. But I never, when I was little, I was a girly girl. So I never thought that that's what I would be doing later in life.
Right. It's cool, though. So you're in there. You're at this time when it's starting to grow for women, and you're starting to get hooked on it. So you're getting out personal training, going to your job as a biologist, and then training at night. And then how long did that go on?
Gosh, I don't.
Because when you got some of your other opportunities, like I'm trying to put this together in a timeline. So. It goes to that, and then how many fights until you get into this Invicta?
Well, so I had a pretty decent amateur career, and we traveled for some of that too.
Right. What was your fight record for amateur? It was good. I looked it up.
I have to look.
I know, it's so bad. You're like, I don't even. That's so funny because like when people ask me about like, if you asked me certain things about my pro wrestling career, I would not be able to tell you like I could tell you the year that I was the champ and everything. If you said, when was your WWE tryout, the first one, I'd be like, 2011? Like, maybe. Where was it? I'd be like, I think it was, like, in Des Moines a couple times. I had, like, and then they sent me to Florida for 3 days, and that was, like, in 2013. And then I went to the Arnold Fest in Columbus, Ohio in 2013. I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember all of them either. I think I had somewhere like 8 or 10 amateur fights before.
I think it was like 10 and you won like 8 of them.
Yeah, I had a lot.
Yeah, which is good. So I'm sure they saw potential in you then, like, oh, okay, this is a good fight record.
Yeah, well, it got to the point where I could no longer get an opponent to take me as an amateur. And that's when we made the switch to pro. It was like when I just couldn't. You could pretty much wipe the floor with anybody. Nobody was willing to take the risk to fight me in their amateur career to have their record. So it got to the point where we're like, well, okay. So then we decided to look for a pro fight. And the first one I saw, I don't know if you know the name, but Jessica Aguilar, who's at the time was a huge name.
Okay.
She'd been in it for a long time, and then she stayed in it for a long time after. So that name came up, and I tried to get it, but the commission wouldn't put us together because she had too many fights, and I was new.
Okay.
But to break into the pro scene, I kind of had to fight way above.
I was going to
somebody
say, so
who'd been in
this
it.
had to be super intimidating and different.
Yeah, well, because new people didn't want to fight me with my amateur record, and so I started by, I can't even remember which
So
fight it
you
was
had
first,
to
but-
start with like something that was probably way above what you really should have been doing.
Yeah, I think
So it was like trial by fire.
it was, it was Monica Lovato, who had been in it for a good long while too, and that was the King of the Cage promotion too. I have to look because I forget.
That's fine. That's fine.
But yeah, it was in her hometown, high elevation. I was still in St. Louis at the time for this, so this was under Burger MMA. But yeah, so we went up to that fight, and yeah, she was super tough, and I got her also in a rear naked choke, and she wouldn't tap, so
Yep.
she was the first person that I put to sleep. And that was my pro debut.
And so who ended up winning?
I did.
You did
Yeah.
win, but she didn't tap.
No, she went to sleep, and then the ref
Oh
called
my
it.
God,
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
That is crazy. The ref.
Yeah.
So it was ref stoppage.
He has ref
And so
stoppage, yeah.
now you'd gotten into the pro and you had won your first fight in there.
Yeah.
Do you think that was something that really encouraged you to keep going?
Oh yeah. I mean, I had no intentions of stopping.
So even if you had lost that first fight, you would have kept going.
Yeah, it
Because you
wasn't-
knew that
it was
it's
just fun.
a long game.
This was all still just fun. There was no long game at the time. It was just
Okay.
like, oh, you mean I can still do this, but now I get paid? Like there
Yeah.
wasn't at this point there wasn't yet a long-term goal in mind.
And was it something where when you started doing this, you still had your regular job?
Yeah.
Right. And was there a point where you were able to kind of fully, like you probably couldn't work when you were doing the Ultimate Fighter and stuff like that?
No, I had already moved out here.
Mm-hmm.
But I did do a reality show that never aired. And I have like contracts, so I can't really talk that much about it.
That's okay. That's okay.
But they took us out, and we'll just say that a lot of people didn't get paid. And they couldn't air the show because they didn't have like the sound equipment or the video equipment, some of the stuff.
So it ended up being a shady deal.
It ended up being a pretty shady
like
deal.
that Fire Festival thing or whatever.
Yeah, and my job did give me time to go do that, and that was
Okay,
6
that's
weeks.
good.
So they gave me 6 weeks of leave where I got to go do that and film that.
Now, were the people you work with pretty stoked for you about all this stuff, or were they just like, "What is she doing?" Or like, you know?
I think it was mixed. I think a little bit of both. I
Yeah.
think most of it was, what is she doing? But yeah, I think, like when we would interact with other labs and I had to make up the black eye or
black eyes and
get the
stuff.
purple eyeshadow for both eyes.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. I walked around looking like Mimi from Drew Carey. Sometimes I feel like. To try to
Okay. I know that
bruises.
reference. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I just had to kind of hide it the best I could. I did at one point have a huge staph infection on my face where I just hid in my office for
That
them
is
and
scary.
he packed it and tried not
Staph infection's
be
scary
visible.
because you can die from that.
Oh yeah, it's part of the sport though.
Right. But so as long as you catch it and you're around people that know how to deal with it, it's not too bad, right?
Yeah, if you get it treated, get your antibiotics and get it treated. And
But if
otherwise
it's not
just
treated,
gross.
I feel like it can be
get real
scary,
bad.
right?
Yeah, it can get real bad.
Okay, that's crazy.
So yeah.
Now, and what about your parents and stuff? Were they cool with this, or your family, or were any of them like, oh, she's crazy, like?
Yeah, so I didn't tell my mom anything about it when I started. Even the first fight before the wedding, I didn't tell anybody about any of it.
Like she probably wouldn't understand.
Yeah, and I was not good at self-promoting because I didn't want a lot of people there yet. I was nervous. I didn't want people there. And so my mom saw the bruise on my eye at my wedding. She's like, what happened? And I was like, I'll tell you after the wedding. And then I told her and she cried.
Oh my god, she's
was
probably sitting there thinking you're getting beat or something.
Well,
at
I think
home,
it
or,
was more like
got in a fight in the bar with some other girl.
No, I mean she had an understanding that it was a sport, but she was more like, why do you want to fight? Why can't you just be a ring girl? It was
You're like, Mom, that's sexist.
Well, I mean, it was
That's old-fashioned
early
thinking.
2000s. Sure.
Yeah. No, totally. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, she wasn't into it at first, and then once she understood, I was like, just think of it as wrestling. Like, I became a wrestler. Like, it's a sport. Once she like understood that it was a sport, and I'm just being an athlete, I'm not having anger issues I'm trying to work out here or anything like that.
Right, because it wasn't like. I think some people do use it as
Oh, totally.
But you were more into it as a sport. Like, it's like something you're trying to figure out how to be good at, right?
Yeah. It just felt really, I mean, it's fun. I mean, you wrestle, so it's fun to just like, go in somewhere and manhandle someone, especially when you look like me and, your coach throws you in with one of his construction buddies and you just tangle him up to a knot, and he thought it was the funniest thing ever. So,
now, was there any times where there was some guys that kind of like, didn't understand, and like have you ever like had to put a dude in his place, like
I would say I've been really lucky. I feel like I've had a lot of respectful teammates, and as I was saying earlier, some of the problem wasn't them not being respectful, it was thinking they were being respectful, but it was disrespectful.
They weren't going hard on you.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that made me, if I found one of those guys who are like pitter-pattering me with punches or like not trying to submit or stuff, I would kick their ass.
On purpose. To like,
I would go 100%.
You don't have to hold back so much.
Right. Well, one, it would piss me off. Mm-hmm. So it would make me mad, and then
understandable.
And I'm like, oh, I don't have to care about you. So it would make me me mad, and then it would make me try to like prove something to them.
Right, like you had something to prove.
Yeah, and then once they're like, oh shit, okay, all right,
and then they got it. Yeah, because it's different. Yeah. It's not like hitting a girl in real life.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like you're trying to help you get better at this sport. So like you're doing a disservice by kind of like going too easy. And I'm sure they know the limit, like... Oh,
yeah. Yeah, and I always had a couple that were great that would try to kick my ass as hard as I would kick their ass, Right. I always had a couple guy training partners that were 135ers, 125ers, like smaller guys, too, that would go pretty hard. They would go hard
with you. Good. Yeah. That's what you need, right?
Right.
Okay, that's understandable. I mean, it's kind of understandable that guys didn't want to do that. Like, especially, it depends how they were raised or 100%.
Taught. Like, and I got it. Like, I understood.
But it probably still, like, really made you, like, want to try to prove yourself.
It was more like I had to learn them.
You had to teach them.
It was like, oh, you think you know, but you don't know yet. So, like, put a little
chip
on my shoulder.
No, I'm actually good at this.
Yeah, so it just, like, put a little chip on my shoulder and be like, I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
You don't have to be nice because I ain't going to be nice to you. And it's like once they got to where like, okay, I have to do more than just defend myself against her, then they would start taking it serious. Yeah.
Like, okay, she's good at this.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So then what year was the Invicta started?
Oh, I have to look at that.
And so this is like what, your first... we got to the point where you had your first fight, pro fight, and then you said you got to your second fight?
Well, so I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fights before Invicta.
Yep.
Yeah.
So 7 pro fights.
7 pro fights before Invicta.
And how did all those go? You were still just kind of learning, getting better and better?
Yeah, my second fight, was that only my second fight? My second pro fight was against Kat Zingano, who ended up becoming one of my best friends.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, so I went out and fought her, and like kind of unbeknownst to me, it was a title fight, but I told him, I was like, I don't want to do a 5-round fight. I'm not, it was my first, it was a high elevation fight. It was in Denver, in her town, and I was like, I don't really want it to be a title fight. So they made it 3 rounds. And we won fight of the year in Colorado that year. We had just like an all-out brawl. She was much stronger, much bigger. I could tell that she had a different level of training than I did. I hung pretty well with her in the first round. I think it was the second round that she suplexed me.
Legit suplex?
Legit suplex. Suplex, not like on my head, but she did the same like I went in for a shot, she wrapped me around the waist, picked me up, and threw me over her.
Tossed, yeah.
And at that point, I was just like, "What the fuck happened?" Sorry, am I allowed to cuss?
Oh, you can
Okay.
swear. It's
Okay.
We do. You have no idea. This is not a
Okay.
yeah. You don't have to worry about swearing.
Yeah, and it was just one of those "what the fuck happened" moments.
Yeah.
So I remembered I was in a fight, kept fighting. We had a 3-round all-out fight, and she won the fight, and they handed her a belt. Which she even was kind of like, well, like later in life, she's like, I didn't necessarily.
But you both
know.
had to feel good about that fight.
Yeah, we had fight of the year, and then her coach and her came back, and they're like, you should come train with us sometime. And at that time I was like concussed and like, sure, go away. You're gonna see me cry.
Right. So
but,
you had really that fight because it was so challenging, and you both brought it so much. You really had impressed them.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that's always like sometimes you both can win a fight in that sense if you both show up like that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it didn't feel like that at the time.
Right.
But
yeah, I'm sure.
A few months later, they were looking. So her name at the time was Kat Albert. She was not wed yet. And then, Kathy Albert. And then she got married and she changed her fight name to Kat Zingano.
Yes.
And then I saw another fight in Colorado that was looking for a match, and so I contacted them. I was like, "Hey, do you know who this Kat Zingano girl is?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh yeah, it's me." But they're like, "But you should come train with me, help me get ready for this fight."
Okay.
And so we started getting into the habit of getting together and training together before all of our camps, and she really increased my understanding of what it takes, like going to her camps and watching her nutrition and supplements and like how strict she was with everything and how hard she was with everything. Everything was 100% always. And they kind of elevated my own training.
Right. So it was kind of like the point where it's not just this hobby. Like she's showing you that it's like all encompassing. Like she was like completely absorbed in it at the time.
Right.
Everything about her lifestyle
Yeah.
was dialed in and calculated to basically try to sharpen her for that one thing.
She had the mindset of a career.
Yeah.
And before her, I mean, I had the mindset of winning, like training like people were trying to kill me, like making it serious every time.
Mm-hmm.
But she kind of showed me the next level of how okay, this is like a career. So I feel like after that fight, I really had a huge shift in how I trained and how I did things.
So she influenced you a lot. And so what did you change? Was it where you just got so much more into, like you said, the diet, the training?
Yeah, she really, after working with her and her camp, I really shifted to more lifting. I knew at that point that, like I said, I was walking around about my fight weight. Mm-hmm. And after that fight, I knew I was like, okay, either I have to drop to a weight class or I need to bulk up and stay at this weight class.
And then drop right before the fight.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to have to starve myself to 115 every fight. So I ended up bulking up and getting bigger and then dropping. So
you put on a lot of size and muscle.
A lot of muscle.
And then, I should know this, but like when you guys basically bulk up like that and then you cut for your weigh-in, how much of that do you gain back? Like so that like, in the fight, are you pretty much like back to like what you were before the weigh-in?
No. So even in my camps, I would not be the biggest. Like the biggest I've walked around at was 155.
Okay.
And then as soon as I got like 2 weeks into a fight camp where everything elevated, my weight would drop to 145, 140. So it would
And then
drop.
how much did you have to get down for the fight?
125.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so through the course of the camp, I would cut 25 pounds.
And how many weeks is that?
Usually 6 weeks.
So 6 weeks, drop 25 pounds. Was that pretty challenging for you?
Yeah, it's part of the process. It's going to be part of the process. Instead of training 2 days, you pick up to maybe 3 days, or and everything is harder when your teammates know. If you have a good team, when your teammates know you're in a camp, they're going to put it on you harder. So you're already burning more calories. Water manipulation. Back then, we were allowed to use IVs. So, we could cut harder because we could have IVs.
Right.
That was before they banned IVs. And not all promotions do that, but the UFC does that now.
Right.
There was...
Is that out of a safety protocol, do you think? So, like, what, they're worried people were cutting too extreme?
Nope, they're doing it because people use IV bags to flush out drugs.
So it's part of the
It's like the USADA thing. Okay,
Yeah, the USADA, yeah.
Okay,
that's
that
a whole
makes
other
sense.
subject we can talk about.
Well,
too.
right, because they're definitely still getting around it. Some of them somehow.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm sure it's just a whole new like. I feel like in any sport, it's like they try to do it, and then people just figure out a way around it, and then they figure that out, and then they figure out it's like it's got to be. I don't know. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and what they test for when you're out of camp versus what they test for when you're a couple weeks out is not like they don't care about recreationals when you're out of camp.
Okay, well that's kind of a good thing. 'Cause
Yeah.
really, that should be none of their business.
No, it's you can't come in and test dirty before the fight though.
So if you like smoke weed or something, you have to quit. Like what?
I think they don't.
Or they don't care anymore about that.
I'm trying to remember. They don't care about it definitely out of camps.
Right.
I'm trying to remember. I think they made it so that it was okay. Like weed is one that I think it's even okay fight week. Don't quote me on that. I'd have to look it up.
Right.
Because it's not a performance enhancer.
Definitely not.
So
Yeah. But like everything else, yeah. Because I know it's changed a lot.
Yeah, it has.
I know, like, I mean, even like Conor McGregor right now totally looks like he's just like
Totally juicing.
totally juiced out of his mind. Like,
But he's not fighting for the UFC right now though.
no, and I think he was in a movie or something, wasn't he? Like,
Yeah, and he's had a couple boxing matches and things like that, and they
Yeah.
might not test. They might not care.
well, and he broke his leg, so he needs to do something to
Right.
get his. Yeah, I
Sure.
kind of can understand it. So, yeah, more power to him, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, have some fun, dude.
He played the game real well.
He did,
Yeah.
you know, like, yeah,
Love him or hate him, he played the game well. He got paid, he...
right. So, are you
Yeah.
on the love side or hate side, or just kind of more like appreciating him as a businessman?
I definitely appreciate him as a businessman. The only times that I was on the hate side of him is when he threw tantrums and injured other fighters pre-fight.
Yeah, didn't he throw like
on the
something through that glass that time?
Yes, and it hurt fighters and it cost them their payday.
Yeah.
Like, that's like, come on.
It's like, I get what you're doing, but this time you just took it just slightly too far. Like,
yeah.
the shit talk is so great for business.
Go be an asshole all you want, but do not
Like,
cost
on the
me my
mic,
payday.
on the mic, do it. But like when you're, when
Sure.
you're actually doing it, like where you get that, where you're hurting somebody.
Right, and I just lost, 6 months. That money was supposed to support us for 6 months, and
Right, and you know, like for a fighter, like it's probably the money until you're like at a super high level is probably very precious.
Yeah, well, and
Like,
you don't get paid unless you fight.
That's what I mean.
Unless,
so it's like,
and even with the UFC, we used to get sponsorships and things like that, but that's
Yeah.
gotten much harder since they've only allowed their sponsor. It was Reebok now.
So what happened? They
Somebody else.
changed that?
Oh, yeah.
So like I remember like even in WWE, like Brock Lesnar would like come out with just like,
Condom Depot!
yeah, he'd have the shit right on his, like he must have told Vince like, look, I'll wrestle for you, but I'm doing whatever I want. And he's
Yep.
Brock Lesnar, so he can get away with it. Because, like, that's unheard of in the WWE that you could, like, have Jimmy Johns on your freaking ring gear.
Well,
you know?
and back in the day, that's how you got paid, right? You were a low-level or moderate-level pro fighter. You'd be lucky to get $1,000 for the fight. But then you'd have logos and
Sponsorships.
gear and other, like, even, like, like, spray tattoo, whatever, on your
Yeah.
body. And that was how you got paid, in addition to maybe promoting them on socials and stuff like that once social got bigger. And then, the UFC decided that they didn't want their fighters looking like NASCAR, and they wanted to be more professional, more like NFL. This was kind of the
So is that
conversation
Dana
they
White
had.
that decided that, or like, or just
I'm
the
trying
company?
to remember if it was Dana that owned it or if it was the brothers that owned it at the time.
Because that does kind of seem like it's like, okay, more professional, but then are you going to pay them more or like give them more opportunities?
Well, and that's the thing is you had fighters making $20,000 off their sponsors or more, and then you would come in and they did kind of do something right, and that's that they, no matter who you were in the fight, no matter what, that sponsor, which was Reebok at the time,
Yep.
you would get paid the same amount for X number of fights in the UFC, but X number of fights in the UFC, not in your career. So, so people who were making $20,000 plus in sponsorships are now making $2,500 because they're new to the UFC.
Well, and how do you can't, like, that's ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah. That's
But you're
tough.
not going to give up your UFC contract, so you're just going to take it.
Is it like a big deal to be in the UFC today compared to like when you were, or is it getting harder to break through to the top? Like
the UFC is the most visible. They're not the highest paying promotion.
Okay.
Promotions like ONE FC and Bellator even.
You can make more.
Will make more money.
Yep.
Yeah, like payout for a moderate level fighter.
But if you get to the very top, it's probably the best.
Yeah, so if you are a champion in the UFC, if you hold a championship, you get a cut of the pay-per-view.
Ooh.
So, right, that's...
So you better hope you're like Conor McGregor talking smack, selling that pay-per-view,
being
right?
a shameless self-promoter pays
Yeah.
in the UFC. That's why fighters start the phony fights. That's why they do
Well,
all
even
of
like,
the
is it
crazy
like
stuff.
Colby Covington that kind of did like the Trump thing a little bit, like leaned into that, like...
Maybe.
So, like, because he's kind of went to this, like, right-wing character almost, and it's kind of like, you know, like, almost like a heel in pro wrestling.
Yeah, well, that's also knowing your crowd, right?
So, well, yeah, and so, like, to the people that agree with him, it's like, oh, he's, like, agrees with my values and stuff, and then the people that disagree with him, they can hate him, but they're going to want to pay to see him.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to see, I hate that guy's views, I want to see somebody beat him up.
Exactly.
You know? So it's like,
Either way, love him or hate him, if you
Smart.
think about him and he's in your head, you want to see what happens. So,
Right.
yeah, talking shit or making some kind of big deal where you go viral or whatever, it's going to make
it's
people
like all
tune
about
in.
stuff from, like, even, like, I'm a pretty big fan of Israel Adesanya, and, like, he just lost that fight, and then he, like, came out wearing this big, like, fur thing. I don't know
Yeah.
if you saw that, but,
I
like,
didn't, but yeah. I've
I'm like,
seen
okay, if
that.
you're gonna lose the fight in your first like interview after you come out with like a gold Rolex on, wearing
Yeah.
this big ass fur, looking like a badass, like
I'm
did
still
you
winning.
really?
I'm
Yeah,
still
he's
winning.
still winning in life, so it's like that was a statement, you know.
Yeah.
And he's so young still that he's got a lot left before he's
Sure, and of course he's going to an after party to come out like that. You know, like they're dressed. They're like, come out to my venue. That's I'm sponsored and getting paid to go to this venue.
Right.
You know, like one of the other few ways that you can get.
So
a little bit of
did
pay.
that ever kind of lead to any of that kind of fun, exciting stuff for you? Like when you were in the heat of it all, was it all work the whole time, or was there certain times where like, did it ever get to a point where you felt like you got this like sort of level of like recognition from people, and
Yeah.
did you like that or dislike it, or how did that all play out?
Yeah, when I was Invicta as it was an all-female sport.
Mm-hmm.
If you tuned into Invicta, so I mean, think about like pro basketball players, women versus men.
Yeah, there's a lot
right?
less eyes on it.
Right, there's less eyes on
Takes
it.
a lot more work to get it. Yeah.
So there is like a love. It was definitely where I had a lot more recognition, you know, especially in areas where I was from and things like that. Like a lot of people knew my name in my hometown, but if I left that town, you know, nobody
Yeah.
really. I have been recognized a few times after I did the Ultimate Fighter and things like that.
Did
too,
you kind of
but,
like it, or were you a little bit like?
It depends on how they approached.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like kind of fun, but kind of not. I feel
Yeah,
like.
most people, if they come up, they saw me in the supermarket and they were like, "Oh my God, it's you!" You know, and that's fine. I didn't mind that. Kat, my friend Kat, I cornered her for a lot of her fights, and people would come up to her, screaming at her and like touching her and grabbing her like in
Yeah.
large crowds, and that got really uncomfortable a few times.
Right.
Yeah.
Not fun.
It was, yeah, it got scary.
Actually, it could get like scary like that, right?
Yeah.
Like where it's like too much, almost like people want a piece of you, or like
Yeah,
you feel
I
like
mean-
you owe them something.
Well,
or,
and you
like-
want to give to your fans, but when it's like too much like that and you've cut weight and you're about to fight tomorrow, it's just like, I need to get to my hotel room and hide. You know, it's just too much sometimes. But
Isn't that crazy? And then
Yeah.
imagine people at like Tom Cruise level, or like you have no shot of having a normal life. It's
right.
like,
Yeah.
it's pretty wild.
It is pretty crazy.
God, I was just about to ask something, and it totally just
Slipped
my mind.
We were on Invicta and
Well,
the fun things
right,
that
like
come
the
with
fun
it.
stuff. I'm sure it was kind of fun to be that person, and like
Yeah.
honestly too, like you had to feel, well, maybe not, but you probably felt some sort of like, as far as like being a female role model, it was probably kind of cool to be in that time where like it wasn't always a thing that women did, and now all of a sudden you might have like younger girls looking up to you like, whoa, that's really cool. You know? Like,
for sure. I mean, it's weird because when you're in it, like,
you weren't thinking about it.
no,
at
it's
the
you
time.
don't. Other people would, like my friends or family who were with me at stuff would say stuff, and like I would walk into a room and people would be whispering, "That's Barb Honchak,"
Yeah.
and stuff like that I would never even pay attention to. But then they'd like later be like, "Oh my God, look at you," and I'm like, "Look at me, what?" Because
Yeah, you're just doing your
oblivious.
thing.
Yeah, right. Or I'm pre-fight and just focused on what's in front of me, and everything else is just kind of tunnel visioned out, you know. So I wouldn't notice stuff like that very much unless
It's
somebody
like
pointed it out.
They're
to me.
seeing you as this person, but you're focused on like staying that person. Like you have to like, you know, you're focused on the things that you actually need to do. Like, okay, I have this fight coming up. I have like, I'm cutting weight. I'm like low on energy. Like, and sometimes you just like, you don't get like what all the hype is about, you know? It's like, you're like, I'm just a person. You could do this too.
I'm just like the super nerdy, like I sleep a lot and work out a lot, like. And
now I'm into this fighting thing. Yeah, we don't always see ourselves how other people see us, I think, you know? And it's like, you just have to like try to appreciate that. That's why like if people come up to you, you just got to be like appreciative. I feel like.
No, if people
unless it's creepy, like you said.
No, if anybody ever came up to me, I was almost always like, oh, you know, like pretty happy about it. It's like they remembered, you know.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it was. I liked it. It was more like the social media Monday morning football players, that kind of stuff that I hated.
Was there a lot of that stuff?
Yeah,
like, she should have done this.
I got to a point where I just didn't look.
You just can't read the
comments.
Well,
and women's sport is not necessarily about how we perform, but how we look while we're performing.
Your body's getting picked apart, objectified all the time.
Oh yeah.
You know, and it's crazy because like and this drives me nuts because like I work in a bar on the weekend, so it's like. One of my biggest pet peeves, and it's like I should just get used to it, is like you'll literally see these dudes like watching like professional athletes on the TV, like telling that guy on the TV that he just fucked up.
Right.
And it's like, bro, you're eating like 2 bags of potato chips and swilling down like
your bush
just like tons and tons of beer down your fat gullet, and you're telling that guy that's like an elite athlete who's getting paid millions of dollars that he fucked up in life.
Yes.
Like you might need to like chill. You know? Yeah. And then those same guys, when you add a female to the equation, it's like, oh, she's not even very hot. Look, she looks like a man, bro.
Right.
Look at that. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like
comment on your lack of boobs because you're all peck, and it's like, well, no shit, you know. Unless a lot of women in the sport end up getting implants because they hear it. Oh yeah, because one, you're so lean that they go away, but also because
does there feel like there's pressure to be like,
well, they make you money,
right? So when you go back to it as a business,
right,
looking good is only going to help.
Augmentations help pay the bills.
I mean, that's
because of that population.
The reality of it, you know, like if you're a personal trainer and you look good, you're going to get more clients. You know,
exactly.
It's
like 100%.
If you're a pro wrestler and you look good, it's kind of like, it's not fair, but it's a reality.
It's a reality, yeah.
So even same with like a guy that's trying to be a pro wrestler, like I've had certain people ask me for advice and this and that, and like these are certain dudes that are like, you have no athletic ability, you have like, I'm like, the only way in for you is having some really great character. You know what I mean? Like you don't look good, you're not jacked, you have not good genetics, you don't really have any athleticism. You have to have like, so I'm like, you either need to like have a great gimmick that's going to make you lots of money and be able to talk really well.
Right.
Because there's like a few, like wrestling's like talking really well, and some of this goes to UFC too, like Conor McGregor with.
If you have the right kind of
selling pay-per-views is about your mouth, right?
Right.
So like.
And also, you want the promotion to want to promote you. And the way you look is a huge part of that.
So if you're a girl and you look sexy, like that's just gonna be
they're
gonna look at that.
You're probably gonna get some easier fights in the beginning.
So it might not be fair, but if you're thinking about being successful, it's something you're gonna focus on.
It's still Hollywood.
Well, and I know a lot of females get like breast implants in a lot of sports.
Yeah, totally. And a big part, some of it is just because they want to feel better about themselves. Because when you get so lean,
right, and in that case, it's like that's
you're
fine.
losing your fat, right?
Yeah.
So some just get them because they want to feel better about themselves, but it is also marketable.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm always kind of like pro people doing whatever they want to do for themselves.
100%.
If it's like, you know, any kind of plastic surgery or whatever they feel like. Tattoos.
Definitely. Piercings, tattoos, any of it is all the same to me.
Whatever makes you feel good. And you feel like
absolutely.
Because I always feel like life is kind of like you're creating yourself, so I'm not going to tell somebody how to create themselves.
No, I have no disrespect to anybody. Like, get them. You know,
right,
like,
but that is a thing I could see where it's
totally.
like you get these dudes watching it that are just, same with like WNBA, they're so mean about it. It's it's like, okay, so she's not like not every girl has to be designed to like find for you sitting at a bar drinking and eating potato chips probably haven't done shit in your life to like, you know, she's not there to like look good for you.
Yeah,
you know,
but
like,
there is also understand that any female athlete is still a public figure, and you're gonna be scrutinized the same way that any public figure is. So
right, so
you
it's
just
part
have
of
to
it
decide
comes
if
with
you
the
care
territory.
or if you don't care, or
I think not caring is the best way.
Yeah,
Or trying not to, right?
Yeah.
Like I mean, it's kind of like anything. If you put yourself out there, like on Instagram with like fitness and stuff, and like people are gonna make comments.
Totally.
You're putting yourself out there, so it's like it's not always fair, but it's just part of it. But honestly, too, like some of it is like if you want to look good for yourself, like why the hell not?
Yeah, 100%.
You know? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with it.
Sometimes I think we do kind of like vilify like people trying to like feel good about themselves.
Yeah, it's the same though. Shaming somebody for being unattractive or shaming somebody for being attractive.
Yeah.
It's the same.
I don't like that stuff. Like
No.
when Adele lost weight and people were like mad at her. I'm like, she wanted to be healthier and like
Right.
you're mad at her now.
Right,
Like that was
yeah.
weird.
Right.
I don't know. So yeah, I'm just pro like people doing whatever brings them joy.
Makes them feel good about them. Yeah.
Yeah,
totally the
yeah,
same.
it makes them feel
Yeah.
good. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
We got way off on that tangent.
Well, that's kind of how this show works usually. Honestly, it's like kind of just a low key chill like hang. That's usually how it works.
Okay, good.
But you've done some really cool stuff, so I did want to try to keep this one a little on track.
Okay.
Like sometimes like we'll have guests and we go off like on
Sure. Okay. Good. Well, I'm
crazy-
glad to know I'm okay to run on tangents.
Oh, you can do it all you want. It's supposed to be just a conversation. I never want to have it too structured because
Yeah.
I feel like that's just not fun.
Right.
You know, it's just like anyways. But so after Invicta, you became their first ever flyweight champion.
Yeah.
And so flyweight is what? You said
125.
125. Yeah. And so let's talk a little bit about that. What was that like?
I felt when I got the title, I felt like so at that point, let me back up just a little bit. There was a point in my career when I was working at the lab, and my husband for probably 2 years was like, quit your job and fight full time, quit your job and fight full time.
Okay.
But I wasn't ready to give up the security of my full-time job and benefits, health insurance, and everything else. So he was in school, and because he was in school at the time too. I had finished my degrees, and he was on his last degree. So there was a point where he was at his last year. So he had to do a year of like work to get into the next. No, wait, was it? He was in his last year of his education. And I decided to take that year and see what I could do with it. So I quit my job at the university to go full-time into fighting and training.
Okay.
And so I kind of gave myself this year window to see what would happen while my husband was finishing school. Mm-hmm. And then also once he finished school, see what he did, like where he got a job and how.
Right, because one of you had to have some kind of like steady.
Yeah. So there was like this 1 year gap kind of where I was doing personal training and just fighting full-time. And in that time, Strike Force folded. So the big, at the time, the pinnacle for where I could have gone, you know.
And was that something that you had been looking at as like this is like the place I want to go?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of the places. Otherwise, I mean, there's always the local smaller shows too that had them, but it was like, okay, well now what, you know, because that was like where you saw Gina Carano and Julie Kedzie and the bigger names at the time, Alicia Tate.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, but there was also rumors about Invicta starting up. And around that time, my husband had finished school and he'd gotten a job in Northern Illinois.
Yep.
And that's when I moved up and started training with Pat Militich and MFS. And so I was at MFS for just a few months, maybe somewhere between 3 to 6 months. And I got a call from Invicta asking me to be on their first show. And I said, no. I said, I just moved. I'm learning my team. Put me on the next card. Okay. So then they did. And I had a fight against, my first fight was Bethany Marshall, I think, on that card.
Yeah.
Yes. Bethany Marshall, yeah. And yeah, that, so working with Militich, they're hardcore wrestling. Like there's a lot of wrestling. Everything about them is when your stand-up game, your stand-up game is such that you can take a shot, right? Like a lot of it, and if you can't, you take your shot, you miss it, you get back up to box. Like there was a lot of integration for boxing and wrestling. And when I was with Steve, I had boxing and jiu-jitsu, but wrestling was like, we had wrestling, but it wasn't clicking with me. And when I went and trained with the Militich group, everything was wrestling. Like, there was always an aspect of wrestling and everything.
So you're adding something new.
Yeah, my skill set, the way I boxed changed. A huge emphasis on footwork also, so you could take shots and be steady. You know, at any point you could shoot.
Yeah.
So a lot of emphasis on footwork. Everything integrated wrestling, and my jiu-jitsu changed because I had different instructors. So everything changes when you change camps because you have a different perspective.
Was that hard, or was that kind of exciting to? You were open to something new. You were like a sponge at the time.
Yeah. I was nervous because I had to go through the breaking in a new gym process. Like,
it's hard to change sometimes. You get used to certain patterns, you get used to certain things, and you have to break habits sometimes.
Well, and also, if I walk into a gym and they didn't know who I was, they're side-eyeing you. You know, like, I'm already a pro.
Well,
at
you have
this
to
point.
prove yourself all over
Right.
again.
They're like, oh, God, who's this girl? Because there's a lot of fighters come in and go out of places, right? And some of them can cut it and some of them can't. And Militich had that old school mentality where you break your nose, you go bleed it out, and you get back on the mat.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you don't miss, you don't, you know, just because you're not in a camp doesn't mean you're not here because your teammates are.
You're going to have to prove yourself.
Right. So it was, again, I feel like a leveling up of training. I had a new conditioning coach. I found Josh Howitt, and he also, like, I still use some of Josh, like, I do personal training now too, and I still pull from things I learned from Josh.
Right.
But yeah, so I had Junior Hernandez was my head coach, and we did a lot of one-on-one. Like, he would always he's like, I'm not a coach, I'm just a fancy training partner. I'm like, no, you're my coach. But because we did so much, like, together, grappling, boxing, like, he knew exactly what I could do, what I was capable of, what I wasn't strong in, and he would help adjust that.
Okay.
And then when he would look at my potential fighters, like, he would adjust his style to be more like them, so that he was, without even telling me, like, kind of conditioning me already for that fight. So he was amazing. And all of that, and
I mean, that sounds like a really good coach.
He
like, not
was
just
amazing.
like he knows fighters' styles, and he's able to kind of simulate that to you to try to get you, like, used to it before the fight.
Yeah, he saw that I was willing to work hard, and he got invested, and he was amazing, and he is the reason that, I mean, I give him a lot of credit for the reason that I got to become a champion.
That's so cool. So you get this new place, and, like, I think it is hard whenever you leave something where you've already proven yourself, and then you have to go on to something else where, like, you're like, oh, these people don't know anything about me. So, like, you have to do it all over again, and, like, you have to show that, like, you have to just work hard. I think it's like how you get people to, like there's certain people I know, they'll be scared to go to a certain gym or this or that, and it's like, if you just focus on yourself and you're working hard, nobody in that gym is going to give you a hard time.
No, not at all.
And if you think it's their problem, it's you're the one with the problem if you can't, like, see that. You know, it's like they're not giving you a hard time. If you're in there working hard, you could be at any level of fitness, and if they see, they see you go in there and work hard, no one's gonna have anything but respect for you.
Yeah, and that's kind of what happened. And it's like just relearning your teammates and having them relearn you. And actually, that gym, they had women come through, so they were pretty open.
So there wasn't a lot of that, like, we're against women, because I forgot about that aspect of it.
Yeah, not so much. I think they had a lot of women come in and not stay. Like, they come in and be like, nope, but
where it was maybe a little too intense.
Yeah.
But do you think that hardness, that intenseness of it, really is what kind of, like, sharpened you up to, like, get you to
I've never had a fight that was as hard as a night. We did hour-long sparring set. Not like we'd rotate, but you'd be rotating for an hour in sparring sessions, and not a single one of my fights ever came close to some of the rounds I had in there.
Do you, like, look back now and you're just like, I suppose you probably remember it, like, with fondness almost.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was going to say, every time I've had anything super hard in my life, it's like sometimes going through it is horrific and horrible, but when you look back on it, you have this, like, almost like you look at it with like rose-colored glasses because it was like such a thing that like made your life. So like
I never hated it. I mean, sure, there were nights that I was like, I really don't want to go tonight. But as soon as I got in there and warmed up, I was happy that I was there. I'd be so tired that I'd be in the locker room shower, sitting on the floor to shower because I was too tired to stand up or too bruised up to stand up. So I'm like on my knees in the shower.
So yeah, you had none of that anxiety could get you either. You just like whipped all that out of your system. I'm sure.
I mean, there was definitely anxiety before the sparring nights and things like that. But
I think that would be normal though.
Yeah, but
you'd be crazy not to, right?
But you also kind of shift your anxiety. Like you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna get my ass kicked. To okay, tonight I'm not gonna let that happen, or tonight I am gonna get him. I'm gonna get that takedown. So
like little failures that you'd had that you'd been like, next time I'm not gonna let that happen. I'm gonna get better at that.
Yeah.
There's a thing. So you had like little goals kind of that you're working on.
And all it would take to make that. I mean, I could have got my ass kicked the whole night, but if I just had that one thing that either they didn't get on me that night or I did get on them that night, then that was like, I was so happy after.
It's so crazy how it's like so close to like a performance or like, because it's like if you're like playing music or something and you always have this one spot in the song that's giving you trouble, like, oh, I can never hit that note at that spot. Like, oh, I got to remember at this spot, I got to take a deeper breath here and then brace my core here, and then I got to go here to hit that note. Like, it's weird how like it's such
similar. No,
very similar.
It applies to like even the college grind. I was like, I can grind in the gym because of that college grind. That mental grind because it's not.
Was
very
college
different.
tough? Yeah.
Yeah, and I would kind of use like, okay, I'm in midterms. Okay, I'm about to go take the final. And I would kind of think of the
There's
fight.
like an art to that even.
Yeah, right. Like you have to study your opponent. You have to do the work. If you prepared for the test to be it an exam or be it the fight, like if you put all of the work you could possibly put into it, then you're going to go into it with very little doubt. And then, that's...
I think that's true with like any kind of test or anything like that. It's like, I just did like my NASM test and like studied a little bit for it. And I studied good enough, but it's like every time you take the practice test, it's like different questions, different questions. And then you get to the test, and then I crammed just to be safe for like the 2 nights before I took it, just because that's always how I take tests. I like to just cram like the couple nights before, go over everything. And then you get to the test, it's like none of the questions you've ever seen before. And you're like, I'm failing this, and you're like, oh, I passed. Yeah. You like know it, you just don't realize you know it.
Sure,
like,
Yep, exactly.
Not that that's as hard as college. Obviously.
I mean, I don't know. The test, I studied pretty hard for my PT test too. So
it's so funny. They're kind of, some of them are tough.
Yeah.
They just put so much random stuff in there. Like I didn't even see this in the. Where did this come from?
Yeah, I had no idea what was going to be on it, so I overstudied for everything. So I felt pretty good about it when I went in, but not when I went in. But after I left, I was like,
I know. Okay. Like halfway through, I was like, okay, I think I'll be okay.
Yeah.
But. I don't know. It's fun doing those things and like making those adjustments in anything you're trying to do in life. Even if it's like the gym and you're trying to get better at something. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like you said, going to this new place. It's kind of like very similar to like trying to change a bad habit with like a lift you have or something. And being open to like new...
Oh, yeah.
A coach telling you a different way. But I always thought it was, that's... Maybe that worked for you in the past, but it's not working now. We're going to try this.
Right.
Like letting go of like previously held ideas you had. Like if you would have went into that new training and been like, well, no, I'm going to do it the way we used to do it and like not listen to you guys. It's like,
oh yeah, no.
You know what I mean?
No,
you have to go in really open-minded. Yeah, that's ego.
You squash the ego, right? That's, yeah.
So that's kind of what's good about it. If you said Pat Miletich runs it like that, where it's like, it's very much like hardcore, like old school.
It was still a very old school mentality. Yeah, it was.
I kind of like that stuff.
Yeah, I kind of do too. And when I've gone to other gyms, I'm like, these guys are soft. But then I'm like, maybe they're just smart.
Right. Sometimes that's what I mean. I think there's shortcomings to some of it, and like, and then there's certain places where it probably can get almost like abusive and stuff like that.
And
so that's the. Too far.
Even if it's not necessarily abusive, there are people in the gym that perceive it as abusive, and that's a really fine line too.
It's like, is it actually abusive, or are they a pussy?
Or are they, right? Like, are they trying to make you better, or are they trying to abuse you? And that there is, I think
That's what I mean. It's hard. You have to like. So obviously for you, this was a good balance of it. But I think it can go too far.
Totally.
But then I think there's also people that perceive things as too far sometimes
Yes.
when they're not, and it's like
Yeah.
really you're just lazy,
Right.
or you don't want to work hard.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, and it's like it's such a weird line to try to navigate,
Yeah.
or you just don't care. Like MFS, there was somebody who came in because we had like pro only trainings, and there were
Right.
people who'd be like, "I'm going to come to that training." You're like, "No, you're not invited. Like it's an invite only," and then they show up anyway. And you know, there were nights where, you know, coach or gym owner might be like, "Knock him out." You know,
Just
like,
to,
it just had that
teach him
mentality.
a
Of,
lesson.
yeah, you're gonna check his ego, like, and if see if he comes back. If he comes back, then maybe we'll talk.
Well, and that's like it's a hazing process, but sometimes it's necessary because it weeds out like the weak people that
In
really shouldn't be
sports
there.
like that,
Yeah.
right? Like because you got to think too that you're representing somebody's name,
Yeah.
right? Like, and Pat is somebody who's produced tons of champions, right? Like tons of champions. Some such as Robbie Lawler, who's still into it, you know. Like,
So it's like he clearly knows what he's doing.
right, and he doesn't want to send somebody out, you know, and no coach wants to build their name on somebody who goes out and fights like garbage.
Well,
So
and you're kind of representing your coach too.
you're representing
and
your
so that's
team.
why they're trying to weed out because it's like this actually goes back on me. If I'm going to train you, so I'm trying to look up
and
something.
the success of the gym.
Oh yeah, it's all you're all. I mean, even like me with like I train with Renovation Fitness. That's my coach. Like, if I suck, like it's gonna look
Right.
bad on them. You
right.
know,
And
like
you want to build high-level fighters so that you attract high-level fighters and you can continue the process. So yeah, and I think he definitely had that mindset. Like you're representing militant fighting systems, you know, so you need to go represent me well.
right. So I'm trying to. It's a Hiro Matsuda was this Japanese wrestler, and so like when Hulk Hogan, you know Hulk Hogan, the
Yeah.
pro wrestler, like. This is kind of a story like yours. So like when he was like just a big, tall dude. You know, obviously he's always been big. Hulk Hogan, he's huge, but he was like a bass player in a band. It wasn't like he was like a great athlete or anything. But because of his size, people told him to get into wrestling. But like back then, wrestling was like impossible to get into because it was very protected by the people in it because it was still very much like they call it like kayfabe or whatever. It's like. People still thought it was real.
Right.
Before the night. Or
yeah,
like some
you don't
people,
want to give up the magician's tricks.
Right, exactly. And so it was very protected at the time. But so even him, he had this great look. He's this huge guy, and he tries to get in. And like the first time he went, I guess this dude Hiro Matsuda, like was like, okay, you want to be a wrestler? And he like let him in the ring and like showed him some things, and he broke his arm. Legitimately, just grabbed his arm, put him in a hold, and broke his arm. But then when he came back, it was like that was the thing. It's kind of like you said, like just the fact that he came back after literally
Right.
getting his arm broke. He had to go back, heal his arm, get back in shape, come back, and he's like, I still want to be a pro wrestler.
Yeah.
Like so that was it. You know what I
Right,
mean? And
yeah.
then like, I mean, I think that's a little too extreme. I don't think we should do that. But
Sure,
you know what I mean?
but
Like,
no, I mean they didn't intentionally break his arm though. You know that's where the abusive line is. But he broke his
Right.
arm and he was like, "No, I still want to."
So he's showing like, hey, this guy's not gonna give up. He
Yeah.
wants like. It's like anything. They just want to see how bad do you want it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And if you can keep coming back, because it's kind of like life. I mean, imagine if like you gave up on stuff in life every time you failed.
Yeah.
You'd just be nowhere.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's definitely all of it. Like, all of it fits together. I feel like all the things I've done kind of go together with just getting through the shit part of it.
Yeah, it's worth
For
it.
what's
It
at
made
the
you
end.
makes you strong too.
Yeah.
You know, so it's funny because Invicta is owned by I think Anthem Sports, which is like the same people that own TNA Wrestling,
Yeah.
which was like another. So that was like Spike TV.
Right.
So was Invicta televised on like Spike or was it?
When it started out,
Or was it a
I
lot of
think
pay-per-view?
It was UFC Fight Pass.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so all of the beginning, I think it was all UFC Fight Pass, and then I think they got networked, I guess.
Right.
But while I was in it, it was all Fight Pass.
Okay. And so then Flyweight Champ and then Invicta, how did that lead you into your opportunity with being on Ultimate Fighter 26?
Okay, so I was recognized as the number one 125-pound champion, and even
That's
after,
huge.
yeah. And my gym kind of disintegrated a little bit. Like literally, they demolished the gym and built a bridge over it. And when that happened, a lot of people dissipated because there wasn't.
So the group that you had been with, like training with, fighting with, struggling with, it all kind of like started.
Yeah, some people went to like top team. Like people started going to other gyms a little bit, and then it literally got plowed down to put up an interstate, and so we all kind of spread.
So it wasn't like we're getting a new building. It was kind of like, well, we're just done.
Well, yeah, and I was at a point that, you know, I was in my upper 30s, and my husband had an opportunity out here in Washington.
Yep.
And I was at a point that I was like, well, you know, I could be okay retiring now.
Right.
You know, so I did check out gyms out here and saw that there were a few, but I didn't know what it was.
You already felt like you'd proved enough.
Yeah, and it got to the point that when you're champ, like when you're on top, you know, like there's always a bullet after you, right?
Yeah,
so like you
it's a
have
lot
to
of
stay
pressure.
right. So you're always in shape. You can't really say no to any fight, right?
Yep.
Like at any time.
Yep.
So you know, it was a lot of grind, and at that time, I didn't get to fight that many times a year. Like they only put on so many promotions, so like the payout for the grind was. So we're like, yeah. So my husband took a job out in Washington, and I had a couple years off. Like I was kind of gym hopping and training and trying to see like what I liked. And
So you're still kind of practicing it, but like you've kind of
practicing,
come
but
to peace with being done almost.
Yeah, but definitely not at the level that I was. But you know, I was starting to look at other career paths and things like that. And then I saw that the UFC was putting in 125-pound fighters. And they were going to do an Ultimate Fighter for it. And, you know, I like kind of, like in my mind, I kind of dismissed it initially.
So this was like 2017, right?
Yeah.
Ish. So how long had you been kind of not fighting?
3 year. I think it was a 3 year gap.
So 3 year gap?
Yeah.
And that's crazy.
Yeah.
But you were able to kind of keep your stuff sharp, you think?
Yeah, I mean, I was playing, there were a few fighters out here, like other fighters that had asked me to help them. And, you know, I was
so you were
like,
still kind of ingrained in it. You were still like
playing
helping.
with jiu-jitsu, still doing some kickboxing classes, still holding pads and like kind of training other people, but not really myself. And then I saw the announcement, and I just remember driving in to work one of the days and just being like, God damn it, I have to go try.
It was like still a fire, like.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, it was hard because it was like not an intentional retirement. Totally, you know, it was this is a better move for us, you know, financially and everything else.
Right, but it wasn't like you were. It wasn't like you were just done. You just like there wasn't the opportunity.
It was like
wasn't there at the
maybe
time.
I'm done. Yeah.
Yeah, but if the opportunity popped up, you would have been ready.
Right. Well, not ready, not fight ready, but yeah. So I saw this pop up, and I had been working with a fighter over at Catalyst at Eddie Grant's gym, and I saw it come up, and like driving in, and I was just like, man. So I asked my husband, I was like, what do you think about trying out? You know, I was like, I think I have to, and he's like, yeah, go do it. So I went to the gym, and I was like, Eddie, will you help me get ready for these tryouts? And I think we had like 2 weeks of pad work or something that we did to get ready. But it was on my name, like it was on my name.
So you'd already forged this name with what you'd done before.
Yeah. I mean, I was.
So it wasn't like you were just going in cold, like.
Right, and I knew, you know, and I knew that if I went in there with a cocky mindset and talked a little shit, then they were gonna take me in. So yeah.
Is that what you did?
Well, in the interview, I don't remember exactly what I said to him, but it was something along the lines of, well, I'm still considered the best 125er in the world, so either one of your girls beats me, now she's the best 125er in the world, or I'm still going to be the best 125er in the world, you know, 3 years
love
later.
that.
So it was kind of cocky, but I was like, this is how I'm going to get in.
Well, but if you kind of, I mean, it was kind of warranted that you said that.
Yeah,
because
sure.
Like, it wasn't like you were lying.
3 years removed, though.
Yeah, forget about that part. Yeah, that is tough. That's a long time, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
So I went in, I felt fairly unconditioned when I went into the show, and we had a lot of kind of personal things happening in our lives with my husband's parents' health and such like that, which was actually after the show and in between fights that really came to a head. But so, you know, we had a lot of things going on, but
so harder to maybe focus on, yeah,
and honestly, without my coach Junior Hernandez, like, because and also Josh Howitt, my two coaches from MFS, that I trusted them so much and was so reliant on them to have me ready, where I felt now I had to be super independent. But I also kind of knew that I was coming back for my last hurrah. So it
Well-
was a little less pressure and a little more fun, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah, like it's like this is just for fun, like to show I can still do this.
Yeah, and closure, right? Like
It's
to get
closure.
that UFC tick under my belt to like go finally, my weight class is finally here. So I was like, well, at
Right.
least I can go get those ticks on my belt, and then when I'm done, I'll be done.
Well, it's kind of like you don't even realize that you were part of building what it is now.
Yeah.
Like you're this part of it, and sometimes I don't think you like really can realize that as a person. Like, oh, I was there, like making this what it is. So, but now you're like able to step back into it and be appreciated for that a little bit.
That I made fighting a feminine trait. For a
You
lot of
made
women.
contributions to this, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, and I recognize that now. There's a ton of women that contributed to it, but I do love that I played a little role in it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you really did, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. And
Yeah.
then, so was it challenging getting back into it? You said, so when you said that you had like 2 weeks of like pad work,
Before the tryouts.
and then you had the tryout, what did the tryout consist of?
So we went in and there's like a pad session. They watch you hold pads, hit pads, and Eddie Grant came out with me. So we'd already been holding pad, like he'd been holding for me. So we were just like, just keep it simple, make it sharp, loud pop noises,
Yeah.
No, we don't need to do anything super fancy. So we did our pad session, and then they had us grapple. Like they would pick different girls and put us together and have us grapple.
Mm-hmm.
It was really pretty quick, other than just sitting around waiting for everybody to have their turns. It was a pretty quick couple-hour thing that happened.
And how long before you knew that you'd been chosen to be on the show?
Gosh, I'm trying to remember. Well, there was like
Or did you kind of already know, you could feel that you were...
Well, that was one of the instances where people were like, "It's Barb Honchak." Eddie told me that came with me. He was like, "Yeah, they're," And then one of the girls that I had fought before came up and like sized herself up next to him. I'm like, "Oh, you remember that loss," So I knew that I was still having an influence there.
Yep.
And there's also an interview process too. I guess of that part, but I'm trying to remember exactly how it went. But you go in, you do that. Some girls go home. The ones that stay for a couple extra days to do a few other things, and then everybody goes home, and you get like your time to fly back out to film the show later.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they tell you, and then when you knew that you were gonna do it, what did you have to go do to prepare? How long before they started filming? Like between the time that you got chosen to do it, like how long did you have to prepare to get?
It was just a couple months, and they like keep you on the hook because they don't want.
So you're still kind of like.
Yeah, they don't flat out tell you that you are or not, but they're like, well, you're still a potential, and you might be an alternate, or you might be on the show, but they don't tell you until just a few weeks before.
And they probably don't even really know either.
No, I think they do, but they don't want the cast getting out before they announce it.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, so they keep it all. It's like all very hush hush
Yep.
while you're there, and then.
Well, in the age of the internet, you can't. Everybody will know everything before it even happens.
Yeah, even if like you tell your teammates,
You're
like
done,
one of your teammates can. Well, obviously they have to help you train for it, but it's like if one of them blabs, then you can get in trouble for that.
Yeah,
too,
and they
so.
want some kind of surprise factor when they're announcing it.
Right. They want to see they want it,
Right.
and they don't want it to get out before they want it to get out. So it was only like a few weeks before that they really told us that we were going.
Well, I think in this modern time, it is so challenging to create any kind of surprise with anything.
Right.
It's kind of like even like Metallica just announced a new album and they released this new song and it kind of came out of nowhere. And how they did that, how they like kept it under wraps while recording this, I have no idea.
I'll have to find that. I didn't know that.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, see, you didn't even know it. Like,
No, I didn't know.
They all of a sudden released this new song. It was really dope, and they got the album coming soon. And I'm like, God, most of the time, like you'd hear like forever before, so and so's recording an album or this. It's like so hard to create like excitement anymore because of that, or like everybody knows before. It's kind of like that's one thing I kind of miss of the pre-internet time.
Yeah.
Just stuff was like really exciting when it would happen.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, so that makes sense that they would kind of keep it under wraps. And so then when you found out, were you like pretty stoked? Were you just like?
It was a mixed bag. I think a little bit. At the time, I had a dog who was on his way out, passing with cancer. So there was like, I was just
That's
like,
sad.
I remember being really focused on him, being like, please die before I go, please die before I go, kind of a situation.
Because otherwise you wouldn't be able to be there.
I was going to
with
leave,
him.
my husband was going to take care of him, you know, and then I have to do it on his own. But he, you know, fortunately, I guess, it was like the week before he did, we had to take him in. And
so you're able to kind of grieve from that already. And
yeah, and then having
you just didn't want to be gone when he had
I didn't want him to think I like abandoned him in the last few weeks, you know, and like die without me. Yeah, it was really rough. So I was super focused on
that
my
is terrible
dog
to think
at
about,
the time, like even more than I was thinking about this show. So, but yeah, so I was training and taking care of my pup, and that's.
I mean, that's actually healthy.
Yeah, to have
that you were
something
more
else.
worried about.
Yeah, he was my baby.
Yeah, that's good. That's
yeah,
good.
so I had like that was a bigger part of my brain actually before than actually going on the show.
Well, because sometimes we've been talking on here about like how sometimes you get so preoccupied and wrapped up in your goals that you like forget about the stuff that actually matters in life.
Yeah, but I'd also been removed from MMA for 3 years.
Yeah, you were more mature at this point, right? So it's
yeah.
like you knew what was important. And
yeah, I had to get the old lady meds for the medicals done, like the old fighter medicals done. They had to do extra meds.
Damn.
Oh yeah, because I was over, I think it's 35 or something like that, 35 or 37. I can't remember right now. But
and what's the oldest you think someone can fight till?
As long as they want, so long as they
you're
can pass all
healthy.
the physicals, yeah. It's just harder to recover. It's harder
because your prime was probably your 30s, right? So you were probably kind of in your
Yeah.
prime at the time you went back to the show, really.
I mean, Invicta was definitely my prime. I wouldn't say I was out of my prime for this show, but I was past my prime physicality just as me, because I hadn't been training.
For like 3 years.
But also, in those 3 years, I had so many injuries and so many, like, from the years
before where you're beating up your body on a regular basis. It's all came out, I imagine.
So I wasn't necessarily the strongest or biggest I'd ever been, but I had a lot of injuries that were getting recovered during that period too.
Yeah, so I was going to say, do you feel like when you're kind of like in something really, really invested in it and you're like getting beat up and because you're in it, your body doesn't have a chance to like, you know, sometimes when you stop something, that's when your body's like, holy shit, what did you just do to me for like the last like how many years?
Oh, no, and I knew. I mean, I knew I was walking around exhausted and injured and tired, but, you know, you do take care of yourself with nutrition and sleep and ice baths and red light and
so you were still on point with all that stuff. Because like, I imagine if you're into like the personal training, you said you had learned so much from these coaches through the years, you were probably still taking really good care of your body as far as like...
Through the camps.
Well, but even like for those 3 years you were off, I imagine you were...
Yeah, I mean, I was still working out and being active and things like that.
Right.
But it was actually really nice to like not have to
worry
go
about
to
it.
the gym if I was super tired that night. So, but yeah, I mean, I was still hiking and biking and, you know, doing mountain sports. And then I ran a class at a YMCA in Everett and was going to jiu-jitsu at different schools and doing kickboxing and helping playing with some of the other fighters, like helping them get ready, sparring with them a little bit and stuff like that. But they were younger and newer and smaller than me compared to my old partners.
So you were kind of doing stuff like you had a lot to give back, you had a lot to still teach people, so you were still ingrained in it in that sense.
Yes, but I wasn't focused on my conditioning and training as much, but I was still definitely in it. So I was like, I can still do this.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what it's going to look like, but
you still felt you could still do it. You can tell. I think your body knows. Like, you can still do it.
Right. My body still knows what to do. It's just, am I going to have the endurance to do it? We'll find out, I guess. You know, it's more like that.
But then you did have to do it. So you get on the show, and then let's talk about, how was that?
So I was in the camp of Eddie Alvarez. So
I
had
saw
him
that.
and his coaches in his camp.
Yep.
And, you know, I had a decent amount of self-doubt, but I also could, like, feel the fear of the other girls about me or anxiety about having to fight me.
Because you still had that name.
I still had the name, even though I hadn't been around for a while. So they were still eyeballing me pretty hard. You know, so it was a little bit, I feel like, and I was, of course, one of the older people there.
Yeah.
You know. So... It was weird. There was a bit of self-doubt. I felt constantly like I needed more work. Like we never were training hard enough for my standards, like for what I needed. So I felt like I was almost even getting out of shape. I mean, that's not what was happening, but in my head, in fight camp head, I'm like, I need more.
Maybe like overthinking stuff too. Or
No,
like,
I mean that's just
well,
it's
you've
just
been in some
different
camps,
and it's
yeah.
different training styles, right? It's like maybe smarter training styles. Than
But
what
you
I'm
were
used
you were
to.
used to that more hardcore.
And access, because when you're
Yeah.
on the show, you go to the gym on the gym, like in the show's gym time. You have that block.
So you
for
can't
your
just like
team.
get a whim like I need to go work on this right now and just
Right.
like run over to the gym.
Right,
and-
or if you do, you're in the house with all of your opponents. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're like out shadow boxing or whatever,
They can see what you're
they're all
doing.
scrutinizing everything you did. Like I would go swim laps in the pool, and there was a treadmill in the house and stuff like that. But it was like,
Is that weird? You're like living with the people you're gonna fight.
yeah,
That's got to be such a
yeah.
trip.
I mean, but that's all. It's mentality, though, right? Like,
It's part of what makes the show so good, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it is.
It's like mind games. Did you have any kind of like? Was there any drama or like when you're on a show like that? Honestly, did they try to like make any drama happen?
So there was drama. I
Yeah.
think all the girls in the house did a really good job of hiding it. There was one point that my roommates wanted to kick one of the girls out, and I was still fighting. A lot of them had been eliminated, and I was like, we have 1 week left.
Like, why are we making?
Can we, like, I still have to make weight. Can we just not have the drama? We had Lauren Murphy was on the show, and we were friends when we started, and then at some point on the show, she decided to hate me, and I'm pretty sure it's when she started looking at me as competition.
Yeah,
And
it's
she
almost
was-
easier to hate.
She
you.
was nervous about me, and so her and one other girl decided they both hated me and started talking shit. And I I kind of knew what it was, but it's like, you're in my fucking room. Like, don't sit over there and brood.
Oh
Like,
my
I know what
God,
this
yeah.
is. So there was a little bit, but like, and we had mics on all the time. So anytime we started talking about something, like, oh my God, I'm losing my mind about blah, 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 they would come running in with the cameras, and they were all just like sat there quiet.
Because they
We're
want to
like,
get something.
yeah, right. But most of the girls on the show were just like, like, go away.
Was that kind
So-
of weird? Like, so you're like, making your like you're there living, right? You have a kitchen, like you're making all your meals there, you're
Yeah.
training there, everything.
Yeah.
Like, that's got to be weird.
No
being,
doors on any of the rooms except for the bathrooms. The
Oh
only
my
spot you
God.
can go get privacy is in one of the bathrooms.
And how long did that run? How many weeks?
6 weeks.
So that's got to be a trip too.
Yeah, it was, honestly, it was chill. Like, I had just got done with months of nursing my dog that was sick and, like, working
Yeah.
and stuff. I was on fucking vacation when I wasn't in the gym,
Right.
like sitting out back in Vegas looking at the hummingbirds, the beautiful house they had,
Yeah.
the swimming pool. So, and I mean, it was great because you gave them a list of foods you wanted and it showed up in the house,
Oh,
it
that's
was
so they're helping
easy
you out. They're
living,
giving you every
yeah.
like chance to do the best that you can.
Oh yeah, it's like the house is easy living so long as you're getting along with people, or as long as you can like tune out.
But they don't
The
like the
bullshit.
producers. They don't like try to push the drama, do they?
No, they didn't force anything. I
Okay,
mean, of
that's good.
course, if it's happening, the cameras
They're
run
right
to
there,
it.
yeah.
Right. The only spot that they would try to pull things out of you is when they do the interviews. Like, they were, I don't even
Like they
remember.
love if you start talking shit. I
Every couple
imagine.
days, yeah, you were pulled into a room, and it was like you sat in this completely dark room. There was a big light circle
It's
in front
just
of you with the
you.
black. Yeah, I mean, there's other people there, but you can't see anything because of the big bright light bulbs in the camera. And then they ask you questions, So
Did you ever kind of like cut a promo on anybody? or-
Never in my career was I ever a
You
shit
just
talker.
you tried to
I was a
carry yourself
terrible
in-
self promoter. Always.
right. So earlier you were saying that. I want to talk about that a little bit. So like, is that probably the hardest part for you?
Yeah, I guess I just didn't want to give too much personal, like while I was in it and while people were watching me and I was a name, I didn't want to give out too much personal information at all.
It's like, this is my professional me that you get to see. I want to
Yeah.
keep my real me.
I'll be an asshole in
For-
the cage, sure.
Yeah.
That's fine. But I also didn't want my opponents to get an understanding of how I work.
Right. Keep
So,
them guessing kind of.
yeah, like I didn't want them to know how I thought and things like that too when I was really in it. So I was really, I think, probably pretty boring on a lot of interviews,
But it's strategic in a way.
It was. Yeah, it was. And I, that era of women fighters, like, of course, there's always a couple assholes, but we were all kind of in it together.
Because you're still fighting to get this thing
we're
recognized.
still just trying to
Yeah.
get recognition. So even if you, like, I kind of came up with the mindset of we need to build each other even if we have to fight each other kind of a thing. So
Right.
even if I did think you were an asshole, I probably wasn't going to say it publicly because I didn't want to make us look bad in the sport.
Right.
Yeah.
And it actually sometimes makes you look weak. It's like, no, they're a good person. You know,
Oh yeah,
like,
insecurities are loud. Confidence isn't. You know. Yeah. So when somebody was talking a lot of shit on me online, trying to like pre-fight, and so I'm like, oh, you're scared.
It says more about their insecurity.
Yeah. I was like, who are you trying to convince?
Yeah.
You or me? Oh, you're trying to convince you about what you're saying here. Yeah.
That is so true.
Yeah.
I actually love that saying. It's so cheesy, but it's like. There's these certain sayings in life that are so cheesy,
They're just
but like
true, though.
as you get older, you're like, oh my god, that's so true.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's a good one. Insecurities are loud.
Yeah, insecurities tend to be loud.
Yeah. It's like the dude at the bar yelling.
Yeah.
Like he's insecure.
The guy starting shit at the bar, pushing you around and telling you about yourself, and you're like, oh, you're confessing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
100%. That's what's weird about podcasting is like I have to talk so much. And it's fun, but it's kind of like I don't usually talk this much in life. You know? Like, but I enjoy it. It's fun. It's really fun.
It's like a chance. It's the purpose of it. It's a chance to do it. So
it's like really usually a way to like in this era of social media where like all we do is get on our phones. Like this is probably the most time like when I'm on here with a guest for like 2 or 3 hours that we like don't look at our phones.
Yeah, no, it's true. I confess I have looked at mine, but
well, you had to look stuff up. Oh no, and if you are, that's fine. I'm not like saying like please don't look at your phone or anything.
But no, you're not wrong. Like,
but it's weird. Like I'm talking about myself. Like even like when I'm at work, we use our phone so much. Like my boss will text me like. I have to have my phone even at work. Yep. Like, hey, you need to do this thing. Like, okay. It's like, it's such a weird part. It's so ingrained in our lives.
Yeah, it is. You
so
wake up and check it, and right before bed you check it.
I know, yeah, and they say, like, that's the worst times to check it. Like, science is like, right when you get up in the morning, like, don't check your phone.
Yeah, but I do.
I do it too. And, like, at night, I try to wear, like, blue light blocking glasses.
Yeah.
But I'm still on my phone.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Even when I do these podcasts, I mean, that's what I usually do. I'll end up uploading it, and then I'll have to, like, cut clips out of it, and then I'll have to upload those to, like, TikTok. And
it takes forever. Social media takes forever.
When this podcast takes off, so we're talking about self-promotion. So, like, that is tough for you, huh?
Yeah. It's gotten easier now. I mean, nobody's listening like they used to.
Right.
But I've gotten better about posting. But I was also in the, like, I'm of a generation where taking selfies was weird. Like
I know.
Like I grew up. It took a while to be like, oh no, that's okay. That's not weird. You can.
Well, it's so like narcissistic. It's like I take selfies all the time. Trust me, like gym stuff.
And now I do too. But it was like a weird mindset thing that I had. Like if I was in the gym and needed to do a post for socials, it was like a really uncomfortable thing for me to do that. Yeah.
Oh, you think about like when because we're close in the age. Like think about when we were younger, like. If somebody would have been sitting there like in the mirror, like with their lips out, like with like a Kodak camera, like
what the hell are you
people
doing?
Are like, what are you fucking doing, you weirdo?
Or even if one of your homies was in the mirror too long, like when you're hanging out, you'd be like, what the shit are you doing? And now that's like so normal. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. It's definitely changed their culture. Like, I'm not really against it or for it.
No,
I think like
I do now. I selfie now.
It's kind of like what we were talking about earlier. Like whatever makes people happy, but it's like. I think it's like as bad or as good as you want to make it.
Yeah.
Like I think it can be terrible.
If you're using it for validation.
Oh yeah.
Then that's going to be a problem. Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to make money.
Well, that's the way that I look at it. Like if it's a job. I definitely take like gym selfies and I'm putting out all this like content all the time, but it's like only because I could see it possibly being something that's gonna like. Make me money. And it does. I mean, because, like, I'm training people and stuff, so it's like you want to have, like...
You want to represent yourself in a way that you show people what you do, what you can do, and, like, what you can help them with. And that's really hard to look at yourself and be like, this is what I have to offer. Yeah. And that's where I'm really bad at it. Like I want other people to do that for me.
Right. And you do probably have a ton to offer, but it's like, how do you do it in a way that doesn't come off as like insincere?
Right.
Because that's the thing too. Like, I think you want to, like, you would be surprised at how people are watching you and you actually make a positive influence on people's lives.
Sure.
So that's, I think, the good side of it. Like, if you're working really hard in the gym and you're posting constantly and, like, somebody somewhere is, like, maybe sitting on the couch and they're like, man, like, God, look at, like, how much this dude's working or how much you're working or, like, and they're like, you know what? I'm going to, like, do something different than I normally do. And you, like, actually influence them to, like, make a positive change in their life, then their life gets better. You know, like
100%.
that stuff's cool.
I follow people that do that for me too.
Right.
You know. So
oh my God, that's all I do. Like,
but figuring out how to do it in a way that's not disingenuous to who you are and what you actually have to offer, and I think that's like I have a really hard time looking at myself and like knowing how to do that and having it feel genuine and also having it engage people in a way where I'm not doing TikTok dances that I don't know how to do.
Oh yeah,
you know,
like, I feel like it's like
I don't know how to do it. So
I'm on TikTok, you know, with gym stuff, but like I'm like I don't think you'll ever see me doing those dances because like I'm like way too old for that. They'd be like, "Bro, what are you doing?" you know, it's like
I got Sam to twerk though, the unicorn.
Oh,
head
that's
on.
good.
Yeah.
Really?
I brought in a horse head one day at the gym and did like, you know, like the back breaking kind of twerking, not like I can actually twerk. And then I had Sam copy it.
That's pretty dope.
I got Sam to do a dance.
Yeah, that's like your goal, right?
Yeah.
Get him to do it. I had a buddy that was like doing deadlifts in a horse, like he had like the horse head on for Halloween, and he was doing
Sam,
like,
right?
Oh, it is Sam.
It is Sam, yeah.
Okay, so literally same Sam that you're talking about is what I'm talking.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's that same horse head.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hilarious. So how did you meet Sam? Here I'm thinking you're talking about some other Sam,
So I was training with Eddie at Catalyst, and this is back when Lee owned Ego in Everett. Right. So Lee also trained a little bit at Catalyst with Eddie, and I had been working out at like commercial gyms in the Y and things like that because I hadn't found a home for my conditioning yet, and my conditioning takes up a lot of room. It's it's really awkward to do it in very public gyms.
So like you'd go to an LA Fitness, you'd feel super weird.
Yeah.
Trying to do it all.
Oh yeah. No, right. You know, like definitely being a bro in the gym, and definitely was being a bro in the gym, but I was like conditioning for a pro sport, you know, so it's like, but people aren't used to that. So
I mean, they even make a whole gym, Planet Fitness, or what is that?
Right.
They make a whole gym that's like against that. You know?
The lunk alarms, I know.
Yeah.
So I was introduced to Lee from Eddie and found Lee's gym.
Okay.
And I went there and was just like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. But it was still a little weird because I'm, they're power lifters and like strong men and things that they do, you know, super heavy lift and then take 20 minutes off. You know, where I'm joking. I know it was not 20 minutes, but the old powerlifting joke.
Oh, no, they're setting up a lawn chair between their sets.
Right,
like,
exactly.
I'm going to bake some cookies over here between my set and kind of chill.
I was mixing, strength, endurance, and so I'm setting up basically kind of a circuit training where I'm hitting pull-ups and then going to whatever, cardio heavy, or some kind of in-between. And then doing that for 30 minutes straight. And so I think they all at first thought I was crazy until they kind of figured out what I was training for.
Right.
But that's how I met Lee and got into Ego. And then, of course, Sam bought out Lee's part of Ego.
So that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Like, sometimes I'll, literally have people on here and then have other people on, and I forget how the connection, Like, there was one time I had somebody on, and I'm like, well, how do you know? And it's like... Oh, duh. He's the reason I even had you on this podcast. I can't remember this guy, Eddie. He's like, I'm like, well, how do you know him? Oh, yeah, he's literally the guy that sent me your name and said, you should get this guy on your podcast. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right.
So, and I do personal training out of Ego a bit here.
Oh, sick.
So I work under.
That is cool. And so it's hard when you're, we're talking about self-promotion. It is tough because I just started personal training too. I have 2 clients. And it's it is hard, selling yourself with,
what makes you stand apart from other people? You know, it's hard. It is hard to kind of be this is why I'm different, you know?
Right, and I understand that part, but it's also, when you try to explain things to people, I have such a hard time with, making absolute statements, you know? It's
oh, yeah.
Because I'm I just know how everything works, by saying that, I mean, there's so many different things that do work, or it's so hard for somebody's well, this is just the way you do it, bro. This is the only way.
No,
this is what works. And it's so somebody will ask me a question, and I'm hoping that I don't sound like an idiot because I'll be like, well, maybe that might be true. It could, that could work. That could be the reason. We don't know.
Depends on your starting point, what you've done in the past, if you have injuries, if you have any actual muscle or structural problems where
Yep.
you can't move like that.
There's so many factors, so many variables, and so many different things that do work as far as like diet, exercise programs. Like, so for somebody to like, so sometimes I think people that keep it really simple and like, yep, this is how you do it. This is what I offer. Here it is. I feel like that might be more successful sometimes, but it's not. It's not honest to me.
Right.
I'm like, well, this could work or this could work. Like,
Well, and people metabolize different.
right, everybody's
yeah.
body's different. Like, people are like, well, should I do keto? Should I do? Well, I mean, maybe both could work. Maybe intermittent fasting works. Maybe that. I don't know. It maybe all works. It just depends. Like, and a lot of it they say is literally just like if you believe a thing works, it'll work. Like placebo effect type stuff. So,
I mean, the change really has to come with you and your relationship to things like diet and exercise. It's whatever is
and
actually gonna. Consistency kills. No matter what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Whatever diet or exercise program you work, consistency is the biggest.
If you're consistent with it, it's gonna work. Yeah. I mean,
so those are the things that I try to sell myself on, are the real things. Like, if you want to lose weight, it's calorie deficit. There's no like it's not a subjective thing. Like, that's objectively just a true fact, right?
It is,
it's like,
but then there's also nourishing your body in a way that you feel hungry, or nourishing your body in a way that like, are you getting your
in a deficit?
And micros? Are you doing the things that you need to be healthy, not just not hungry, or like
right? You can't just starve yourself, not give yourself any nutrients, and expect to like be healthy.
Right. Yeah.
It's so weird too. Or like people, and obviously in this country we have so much food that is like high calorie but low nutrients. So then like you still feel hungry because your body.
You can be overweight and malnourished at the same time.
Right. That is it's crazy, but it's like it's such a thing. So it's like you still feel hungry, but it's because your body didn't get the things it needs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So you must have a passion for like fitness and diet, nutrition and stuff too still.
Yeah, so what's really funny is when I was in grade school, I would put the neighborhood kids through workouts.
Just naturally came.
Yeah, I would make them go run, and then we'd go back and either swim or do some stupid jumping jacks or something. But yeah, like, in hindsight, it's something that I've always kind of
just been into.
Yeah, I have no idea why or where it started. And it's like, well, if I started out with... But kinesiology wasn't a big field when I went, back in 97, whatever. Like, that wasn't really... There were gyms with trainers, but that wasn't the kind of field that it is now, so...
It's kind of like you said about mixed martial arts, UFC in general, like... Everybody's like got everything covered now because it's come so far. Like you said, in the past it'd be like you'd get a wrestler or you'd get a jiu-jitsu person or this or that. Now everybody knows what to like. And I think the same thing about like fitness, bodybuilding, even like pro wrestling. When you look at like the guys now, like they're all elite athletes because it's just the science of all that stuff has.
Well, high school
even like
kids.
In the 90s, you're right. It's so different. Like the amount of knowledge we didn't have back then compared to now.
Well, and my dad was of the generation that they would play football and they weren't allowed to have water, like, right?
Right. Like
right, the wrestlers too, right? Like they didn't, it's crazy how much and how far the fitness industry and the nutrition industry has come in the last maybe 2 decades. I don't even know. I feel like even now.
It's crazy.
And now companies are bringing in genetic components where you can actually see how your body metabolizes
certain foods. Like you can take those panels and find out what foods are good for you.
You can do blood testing. You can actually do genetic testing to see, like, do you really have that
so like maybe you're literally
intolerance?
just eating the wrong foods for your body. Like,
right. Yeah, you're causing inflammation in your body and your hormone levels are off because of it, and all you really have to do is adjust this. But
isn't that crazy?
It's
and
amazing.
That affects like that affects like your brain.
Yep.
So it's like if you figure some of that stuff out, like you could think a whole different way. It's wild. Like people with like anxiety and depression and stuff like that, some of it is like could be like literally rooted back to that inflammation.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's really great. I just wish our healthcare system would kind of catch up with it and.
Oh, they're not at all.
No, and promote.
Like they're still just like take this pill.
Yeah, I mean they say diet and exercise, right? But they don't actually dive into it. I know.
It's wild. You're right. They really. I mean, I don't.
There's no money in it.
Or you'll see these doctors and like, you like ask them about their own like diet. And it's like you eat like shit, but you're like promoting health. It's.
Yeah, my husband is. My mom was a nurse, and my husband is a nurse, and I can tell you that nurses are some of the worst at maintaining their own health.
It's wild.
They have
isn't it?
super high stress jobs, and they come back and they know better. They see their patients, but
They have the
they've
information.
got their vices too, to cope. So
Right.
yeah.
Well, it's like I was training a client today, and I think he works in like, God, what is it? Like he was in massage, and now he's in like, oh, my brain is just not working right now. Not physical trainer, but like rehab.
Oh yeah.
Like helps people like PT.
PT,
So
yeah.
so yeah, but like he's gotten out of shape himself,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, I mean, he's not like in terrible shape or anything, but he's like, it's just hard to
Rebuild the habits.
do it for yourself.
Yeah.
You can like
Oh,
look
yeah.
at other people.
Totally.
Yeah.
I do that. Like
We all do.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
do that more than I should. Like my clients are way stronger than I am anymore.
Right.
And after being at the gym for 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, I'd like stare at the machine and be like, I could
Well, and
go
you've-
bench. I could go do that bench.
Well, but you've had a large portion of your life so dedicated to a
that, yeah.
physical thing that it probably feels good to just relax
to
a little
have
bit.
the option to not.
Yeah.
And I'm, as I am in my mid 40s now, I'm starting like I've enrolled in a yoga instructor program and stuff like that. So I'm kind of also taking it in a
To more longevity.
little more gentle path.
Yeah.
But also that's really good for my current clients for mobility and stretching and things like that. Like I'm learning
Oh,
tools
you're-
for them too. But then I have this one other avenue I can go to.
You're adding to your arsenal.
Yeah, a little less physical demanding, and also just another.
I mean, I feel like all of us, and I have a lot of bodybuilder friends and stuff that come on here, like, at some point in our lives, we're going to have to transition to a more longevity-based, like, you can't, I mean, look at some of these old bodybuilders. They just look trashed at the end of their career. And
Yeah, at some point I saw a video of myself walking, and I was walking, the way I was walking, it reminded me of, like, people in my family, but the older people in my family, like my aunts, and like
when
and
did
I'm
this
like,
happen?
Oh, shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I really started focusing on, like, spinal mobility and core, because I became a ramrod.
Yeah.
It's like lifters do that too, right?
Yeah.
Like where you don't
So
want,
tight.
you
and,
don't
like,
want your core to rotate or move or do anything. So you're just like this stiff little. And we wrestle, we take shots from the neck to the hips. So your entire spine, we just become these little ramrods. And so
Yes.
I have no rotational ability, no flexion.
Even like Gordon Ryan, the jiu-jitsu dude, he's like said that about his shoulders, how they're like,
Oh yeah.
he's like, and he's in tremendous shape, but he's
Yeah.
like, I mean, I have
get-
this weird like,
We get rolled.
rolled forward
Grappling
from,
and jiu-jitsu, and even boxing, you get rolled forward real bad.
So he's like, I don't know what that's gonna be like when I get older, but it's
Yeah.
like it's just part of it right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy what difference, because like even bodybuilders, you're right. Like when I used to do pro wrestling, I did so much more like stuff where I was turning or using my core in a different way, and now everything's just like bracing, deadlifting.
Yeah.
Like I'm hardly doing any twisting. I'm like, oh man, I need to do more. Like
Yeah.
I'll do stuff with a ball sometimes. I'm like, I need to incorporate way more of that. And like you said, I'm getting older, way more like yoga and stretching.
The movement.
I've been starting to try to do box jumps again, just because like I realize like I am getting older, and if I stop doing that like fast twitch muscle stuff, it's gonna go away.
Same. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
got horses at the gym, like construction horses that I have
Yeah.
people jump over, and I still on occasion grab them out and be like, can I still?
That's how it started with me. I was just like, can I even jump on this box anymore?
Yeah, right.
There was like these football players, younger dudes training for football, and they were in the gym, and my other buddy's like, you really shouldn't be doing that. You have a bodybuilding show coming up in April, and like, what if you blow out your knee? I'm like, I know, but like,
You're still competing though, so I mean, there is do that out of your camps.
right. I should do it like after the show.
You're right.
But I think it's just a thing of like remembering jumping and like doing those more active
The
things in
calisthenics.
wrestling.
Yeah.
And I'm like, can my body? And I think it's kind of like what you said. Every once in a while, my brain is still like, you could still wrestle.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, it's like,
and I still do, but I do it way gentler than I'll play from my guard a lot more. Where I just can be lazy on my back rather than trying to smash everybody all the
but you
time.
still have so much to offer with like training people, I feel.
Oh
like.
yeah. I love coaching. I love working with fighters. I love cornering fights. I still love it. I've definitely gone way more on the side of strength training and personal training and things like that, because people were asking me for it is really the reason.
But you kind of said you like wanted to get away from it a little bit too, right? Like
I mean, there is definitely like there is that letting go aspect a little bit. Like, it's hard. You miss it. You kind of pine for it, and you're like, you look for that adrenaline high and that camaraderie you had with your team, you know. But I feel like I've developed that in a very different way with my clients. I've got the best clients in the world. I would, if I could afford to train them for free, and I've told a lot of them that I would, you know, like, I love them. They're great to work with. They all work really hard, you know, like, so
it's kind of the most rewarding part about, you know, like, I just started, but I'm already like, wow, this is like really cool.
Oh yeah,
like,
wait till you have clients get off meds. Wait till they have. I've had clients that have completely changed their lifestyle, gotten off meds, had job changes, and went back to work. Had completely different
like they start feeling better about themselves.
Yeah,
like
well, hormonal regulation is part of it too. You know, they lose weight, they gain muscle. Like, the body just like, it starts to regulate when they get in shape. And then, of course, there's also the confidence
feeling
that comes
better about
with
yourself.
Yeah, and when people feel strong in their bodies, they're more apt to act strong, like at their jobs and other things.
Well, it's crazy. Like, the one guy I trained today, he just like texts earlier, and he's like so excited about the next. He's like, "So you're gonna send me my diet next week?" And he's like, we can go a little heavier next time. And he's like, genuinely, I'm like, you don't realize, you don't remember that part of your life where you like never done this before. And it's like, you remember, like, oh yeah, like, life's exciting.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like, sometimes I do that where I even watch these, like, on YouTube, there's like these like react videos where people will react to like music that you've known for years. But like watching them see it for the first time, you're like, oh my God, the joy of like hearing like Metallica for the first time, like they're going through that. Like, it's kind of reminds you like how awesome life is.
Yeah,
you know?
the older you get, it's easier to take things like that for granted. Yeah, for
Do you feel like the older you get, like you start appreciating things more? Or like you said, you take it more for granted? I was going to say, I guess I kind of like start taking stuff for granted, and then I'll see something like that and it'll remind me like, oh my God, like, remember that. Like,
yeah, I think I appreciate differently.
But sometimes it is easy to forget.
Yeah, no, I think I just appreciate things now that seem so easy when we were, like, making friends. When you're young, when you're a kid, it's so easy to make friends. Now. Right, and I just have so much gratitude and value for my friends at this stage in life.
Like close friends.
Yeah, right? Like,
it's true, because, like, I've moved here from Iowa, and I have, like, my best friends back home. We're still just as tight, like, but like here, when you do move to a place, like, it takes a long time.
Yeah, and Midwestern people and Washington people are so different.
So different. I didn't even understand the people around here. Like,
I know.
It was crazy. Like, it's like just like different. And now I've met a lot of really cool people, you know?
Yeah.
But you're right, it's a totally different style.
No, we're like Midwesterners, we're ball busters, and we're straightforward. If we don't like you, you're gonna know about it. You know?
My God, I've said that on here a million times, at how different, like how back home people will give you shit, and that's like means they like you.
Yeah, right.
Like, if you said that here to somebody, they'd be like, think you're like being mean to them.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I remember when I first moved out here and went to college and had my first core group of friends, which they're still my family, my selected family friends. But I remember one of them calling me crass, and I'm like, I'm not crass. It was the first time I'd heard that term. I was like, wait, I'm what?
But it's funny, because then I'll meet like people from let's see, like Irish people, or like,
who put Midwesterners to
they're
shame.
people from like other countries, and they're here, you know, and they've been here a while, and they'll be like, they're totally like the Midwest, like they're ball busters, you know what I mean? Like, so they kind of get, and they're like just rougher people. And like,
totally.
Some people here are very much like, it seems like they've never gone through any adversity in their life at all. So like,
and some people don't. Some people avoid it at all costs, you know?
So, but then it's like weird, because when something goes wrong that's like a minor thing, they feel like it's a big thing.
Yeah.
And it's really weird, you know, like, I don't know if it's because, like, I don't know where it comes from or what, but
yeah,
it's just an interesting thing, you know. I've noticed
it's a different vibe out here for sure. But if you find your circle, if you find the right people, I mean, I've definitely found
there's some cool people here.
I've definitely found my ball busting friend, you know.
Yeah,
so
I mean, I love the area. Well, and the same token, like there could be somebody that's been through way more stuff and adversity than I have, and they could look at stuff I do and be like, Jesus, this guy's like a pussy. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, yeah, we all have that. It's like we're all kind of spoiled living in this like modern world. And everything. Everything's pretty chill.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, because I like it. People always ask like if there was any other time you could go to. Like, what about you? If there was some other time, would you want? I'm always like, right now. I'm like, I don't want to go to any other time.
No.
I just think it's like, even though everything's weird, it's like the best time there is to be alive.
I mean,
like maybe go visit. Like if you're like, hey,
sure.
pop you into the 70s and you can watch like,
hell yeah,
you know, like some old concert. Like, yeah, let's do it. If there's
definitely, I want to.
But like not to stay. Oh yeah, Cher's great.
Cher in the 70s, oh my god.
Dude,
I mean, in the 70s, not in her 70s. I mean, I would see her in her 70s.
I mean, she's still great now.
Oh my god, I know.
She's still killing it.
But yeah, no, and I kind of play this game with my husband too, because we talk about, like, if we didn't live in Washington, where would we want to live?
Yeah,
you know, like,
it's a good question.
Yeah, because we kind of play that game too. Like, where would we want to retire if it's not here? And it's just like, I don't know that there's anywhere that I'd want to be besides here.
Yeah, it's like a good mix of like a big city, but not really a big city.
With the mountains and the bay.
And the outdoor
else.
stuff.
Yeah.
It's wild, yeah. It's like kind of cool too because there's enough stuff going on here.
Yeah, like Seattle has so many fun things, do shows, concerts, everything, but then you can like peace out and go to the mountains.
Yeah.
You know, it's
rare.
It's pretty great. Yeah.
Because like I feel like New York would be so big, or LA would be so big.
Yeah,
this is kind of in the middle.
It's harder to get away and get lost, and also because, you know, like the mountains. It was like LA has hills, you know, but those hills have a lot of housing too, so it's just harder to get out and away from the city, where it's so easy here, really.
Yeah.
If you don't mind a little traffic.
It's the traffic is the downfall, and then the like, you know, it's like 4 PM. It feels like midnight right now.
Yeah, but in the summers it's 10 o'clock at night and it's still
beautiful.
Daylight. Yeah, so there's
the summers are amazing.
That's why we tan in the winter.
So we go to the tanning. Yep, we talk to the girl about the creepy guys.
Yeah, that's why we do the tanning bed in the winter. And
yeah.
We get to go out and be out in the bay for 12 hours or up in the mountains.
It's pretty dope here. You are right. Like, I'm definitely not going to complain about it. It's a cool area. And I mean, it definitely made me a better person just the challenge of moving away from your hometown.
I think anytime you move away from your hometown, you grow a little. Yeah. Every place we've ever lived, it's like, a little culture shock, but it's like, it's less and less each time you do it, you know?
Yeah, and it just makes you more well-rounded with different types of people.
Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of cool. So before we go, I want to get back to, so you ended your career in UFC, correct? So like, you had the 6-week show and you did really well in it.
Yeah, I had the 6-week show.
So for having that be your like last, you said like there's still something that was kind of like you wanted to see if you could still like, that had to feel pretty good. You had to feel pretty like...
It did. And like even in the show, you know, if you won the show, you know you're going straight to the title shot, and like, you know, like, that would have been great, but there was still a piece of me that remembered what it was to be a title holder and the pressure of it. So when I lost that last fight, I was pretty okay with it because, you know, like I said, I was coming back in. It was a lot of pressure. Right, I was coming back in to have fun, and if I won, it meant I was going full-blown back in, you know, where when I didn't win... do I even
want that?
Right, and when I didn't win it, it was kind of like, this can still just be play, you know? So... It was good that way too. And then I had 2 fights outside of Tough in the UFC, I think.
Okay.
And then
So did you feel like you got your closure?
Yeah, you know, so my last fight with Roxanne, like, so in between the Tough House and those 2 fights, both of my in-laws had passed, or passing and passed. So I went back to the Midwest and was there for 3 months, taking care of their state, taking care of them and things like that. So we had like this really rough patch, and then I had my fights, which was kind of a good distraction and things to look forward to. But I knew as soon as I left that fight with Roxanne, like even before I think I walked out all the way to the arena, I looked at Eddie and I was like, I'm done, you know, like I knew, but I was still under contract, so like I could have changed my mind. But that summer was the first year I attended Burning Man.
What is Burning Man like?
Well, I'll get there in a second, but
Okay.
it was like 2 days before I went into Burning Man, I got my letter from the UFC saying I'd been cut. So there was something about that was like almost symbolic, like move on to this chapter, you're off to that, because like there's Burning Man is so many things, but like the burning of the man is also kind of like there's a temple and there's the man, and like they're kind of signify like burning parts of your past
In a rebirth.
Yeah. So I was like,
Well,
this is a little too symbolic.
No, it makes sense, and it's kind of what you said earlier. Like, I feel like we get so much of our identity from these certain things that it can be holding you back.
Yeah.
And it can hold you back from like where you're meant to be going. And sometimes like, and you're still that person, you still did all those things, but it's like, it becomes a weight, and you're like, why am I still carrying this weight?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So, no, that transition from having my in-laws, and then my career, like I felt like we made a little temple to his parents in one of the structures. And then I also felt like I kind of put my career in one a little bit too. So it was like this.
And kind of let it go.
Yeah, it was like this amazing. Like I don't know when I walked out of the arena that night that I had the closure, but at that point and after that experience, it was like I felt like I was really able to be like, okay, we're on to the next chapter.
I mean, I feel like that's kind of a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that's exactly how I saw it too. Like when they cut me, I was like, no more USADA.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's like it's a success. I mean,
Yeah.
the thing was a success. I mean, so how was USADA? Was that like, I know now they do that stuff where they like wake people up at like the middle of the night or like right before the fight or
It was terrible. They find you anywhere. You have to have whereabouts at all times. If you cannot be at like what your scheduled whereabout is within an hour, it's considered a failure. And if you get 3 failures, it's the same as a failed drug test.
Okay.
So it's like kind of 3 strikes, and then it's like a big deal if you miss 3. So it's invasive because it didn't matter where I was. I had to like make sure they knew if I was out of town where I was going to be, where could they find me and things like that. And I was at home visiting my mom one day. I don't even remember if it was a holiday or what it was, but there's a knock at the door and there's like strangers at my mom's door and they're like, is Barb here? And my mom was just like super confused because she wasn't really privy to USADA.
She probably had no idea what USADA was.
Yeah, it wasn't right. And, I'm like, it's okay, Mom. They just want to watch me pee, like.
And do they have to, like, literally watch you?
Yeah, there's a woman.
It's so weird.
Yeah, they'll send a woman to go with, and then, like, she doesn't, like, necessarily watch, but she's in the room with me. Yeah.
I mean, I kind of can get it because, honestly, I literally got 2 of my friends their jobs. Like, by peeing for them. Like, because, like, back when, like, weed was, like... I mean, I guess it still is in the Midwest, but, like, I'm not going to say their names on here, but, like... And now they're both doing really well and successful, but, like, the jobs they have today, like, the first job they got in that industry, I literally got them both by, like, peeing in a water bottle. Like, like, my bro literally, like, he taped... Like, he smashed a water bottle down, put my pee in it, and, like, taped it to his leg so it would stay... Because they test the temperature. Had it, like, taped to his leg so it would stay warm, and then, like, peed it into the cup.
Yep.
And, like, now he still has a job in that field.
Oh, good for him.
So I'm, like... So he's, like, always indebted to me. He owes me forever. No, I don't know.
As he should.
But it's so silly because, like, look at... I mean, then you move to a state like this... And you're like, why do they make a big deal about weed? Like, come on. What is...
Yeah, well, it's still federal. It's still a federal thing.
Yeah. It's crazy. I don't know.
Yeah, but I've got friends who are in the industry, and they, like, there's mixed feelings about removing the schedule behind it, I guess, because if it becomes federally legal, then Big Pharma can get involved, and all these small little local growers and shops are probably going to be put under. So I know there's definitely mixed feelings in the industry.
It might be in a better place right now than... If that happens, like then it's like taxed and everything or whatever. I don't know. Yeah, you're right. It's gonna be weird.
Yeah, so there are mixed feelings about it. I don't know. I don't have answers. But.
Well, and like look at what Big Pharma does to everything. Like, they do amazing things, but they also are money hungry and like
it's gonna minimize the number of strains that are out there.
Yeah.
Like right now there's tons of strains, but if it becomes a mass crop, it's gonna. Be like any of our other food where you have like those 3 major strains and that's about it. I don't know that that'll happen, but it's a possibility.
Well, it could get weird. It could get weird like
like the Monsanto stuff with
Right.
like the regular kind of seeds for crops. Like if you're growing this, like you stole that, Monsanto owns the, you know, it's like they do a lot of weird. They can start doing that with like weed strains
Yeah,
and like,
right.
so it could hurt a lot of like small people. I
Yeah.
imagine. Who knows? We're probably gonna see it in our life, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, something will happen. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either. But it's cool living in a state that has it.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty chill here. I mean, I don't even really smoke, but I just think
No.
it's cool that.
I don't either, but yeah, I think it is too. And, you know, like the decriminalization of other things coming right behind it, like the, you know, not legalized, but like mushrooms and using psychedelics and things like that for mental health. And I mean, of course, you know, recreational if it suits you, but there are a whole lot of benefits to them with mental health, microdosing and things like that. And as those
Big
are
time.
becoming decriminalized, I think that'll be the next.
I think that's good too.
Oh, yeah, I think
that
that's
seems like the
coming right
next
out.
thing. But it seems like you're
Yeah.
right. There's a lot of health benefits.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially for like PTSD and stuff, which
Totally.
I've never really had a trip on any of that stuff, so I don't understand it. But I can see how it might like, you know, unscramble some of those like neural pathways that are like messed up in your brain. Not messed up, but like they're so strong that it can like break.
Yeah, it helps they're supposed to help rewire some of the synapses in your
Yeah.
brain, I guess. And also, I think they help with depression and also trauma release. A friend of a friend who is in late stage cancer treatment just used a heroic dose to do kind of a reboot as she was getting ready for her, like towards the end of her treatments. And my friend said that she expressed it as the closest thing she's ever come to God, you know? So,
Right.
and I think it also helps people put in like acceptance and things like that into their situation.
Right. It helps them like
Yeah.
accept where they are now and like
Breaks
maybe
the
see the
ego
bigger
down.
picture. It's
Yeah.
They always say that with those, and like I said, I've never done it, but like DMT or psilocybin, the ego death thing.
Yeah.
And you realize that you're all just part of this like bigger thing,
That
like the
nothing
universe.
really matters
and-
as much as you think it does. Yeah.
No, yeah.
Yeah, right.
So funny. My friend was, not to get too crazy and deep here, like we're smoking weed, but like my friend at the bar sent me this podcast with this scientist. I'd have to look up who he is. But they were talking about basically like the idea that kind of like nothing really is real in a sense because.
We're all in the Matrix.
Well, I mean, I kind of starting to believe that for sure after like the last like 2 or 3 years. We're definitely in the Matrix. But like, it's like, so like animals will adapt to be able to perceive everything that they need to perceive to survive, right? So like if you're like a mole rat that's like blind, you've lost your sense of vision, so you don't need it.
Yeah.
So like because you didn't need it, the adaptation happened that you didn't really need it. So like to the mole rat, it's like that its whole world is like black, but it's like the world is real to it. Well, we're similar because like the perceived world that we perceive is only everything that we need to survive
That
and
we're
mate.
capable of perceiving.
So like we have
Yeah.
no way of actually viewing objective reality of
Yeah.
the world we live in. We only have the reality that human beings are capable of perceiving.
Yeah, when our cats are freaking out and staring at corners of the house, they might be seeing a wavelength that we can't see.
Right.
Simple enough, yeah.
And that's why I've had ghost people on this show. No, because like I'm like, who knows? Like it's kind of a fun. Yeah, I've been trying to branch out, so I've had some like paranormal people on here.
Yeah, I'll have to go find those episodes.
I don't
Those are
really
fun.
believe in it, but I kind of like am open. You
But
know?
at least be open to the possibility.
Right. I
Yeah.
try to stay open to it because it's
Yeah.
like whatever they're seeing it.
We can't perceive it, so we'll never know necessarily, you
Right,
know? So
right.
at least I can't perceive it, so I'll never
I
know.
can't perceive it, but
yeah.
I it's like I'm not gonna not trust these people that I know and love who've told me they've
Yeah,
seen
sure.
things. Something happened, whether it was like in their brain or what, but like
Right.
to them it's real, so I'm not gonna discount what they say. But
Yeah, sure.
but yeah, that podcast was crazy because it
Yeah,
was
I'll have to
like
find that one.
it was pretty cool because it was kind of like it's the idea like is consciousness first or does like reality exist and then it creates consciousness. These scientists were going off the idea that like basically reality exists because of consciousness. Consciousness is there first. So like chicken or the egg, like
Yeah.
consciousness came first.
Well, there's a ton of people that, you know, say that your
Yeah.
thoughts will create your reality too, so that's kind of the same.
Yeah,
like,
and
you
you
can
kinda-
change your reality by changing your thoughts.
I kind of buy into that
Yeah,
in
I
a
do too.
sense.
Yeah, I do too.
And I think probably what you've done as a fighter, like, I mean, you've seen that happen probably.
Oh, yeah,
Your
and I-
mindset probably played so much
And
into
I
it.
did do self-hypnosis techniques, and I
Yeah.
did do mental
Visualize,
work. I did
like-
a ton of mental work, yeah, which I think is one thing that definitely put me over, because that, you know, you spend 99% of the time with the physicality, but if you're not also exercising your mind and how like focusing
Yeah.
it, and also like just telling yourself the things. I used to have mantras, and I would run those mantras through I would do like a series of these mantras 3 times a day.
Right. I do that every day. I
so
tell
that-
people that. They're like, I don't know if they
Yeah.
think I'm crazy, but it's like, I have to tell myself that because it's like I want to rewire my brain to think these good things instead of some of the bad things I
And
maybe have thought.
You can feel it change in your body. Like when you first start telling these things you don't believe about yourself, that you want to believe about yourself, there's like this...
It's like you don't believe it at
There's
first.
like this rejection that happens in your body. Like you're like, you know,
Yeah.
but slowly over time that feeling goes away. You know what I mean? You're
I
like,
think
"Oh,
that's
I believe these
powerful,
things."
especially people that
Yeah.
have bad thoughts about themselves. I always tell them that, like that's not like you'll have a friend or someone come to you and it's like, stop telling yourself that story.
Right.
It's not real. Your brain, or like anybody that's trying to achieve anything, they'll have a bad day and then they'll think the way they feel on that bad day is reality. It's like, that's not reality. It's just, that's your brain trying to fuck you up today. Like, just don't listen to it.
Right.
Just get back on, like and you know that because you train people. So it's like, you had a bad day, like, okay, well, today's done. You've already failed at it. Don't worry about it. Forgive yourself. Go to bed. Tomorrow, get right back on and start where you are.
Yeah, one day
'Cause
being
they'll dwell
bad
on the
doesn't
failure.
knock you off the whole thing. Right, yeah.
But a
for
lot of
sure.
people will sit there and they'll dwell on the failure and they'll start going to this like cycle, and you have to like be like, just don't do that.
Get them off the hamster wheel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
All of our self-talks are the harshest voice we ever hear, I think. So, you know, like helping people to reprogram that when you're training is really valuable.
That's cool, really.
Yeah.
You're making a difference in people's lives.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think that's pretty dope that that's what you transitioned into.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you know, it's kind of just the path that happened.
Mhm.
You know, as all of it.
It's kind of the natural, like you'll know. I feel like you know when you're on the right path.
Yeah, well, I mean, I felt like, you know, I struggled so hard to get through my education, and even like the job I landed wasn't necessarily the job that I was hoping for.
Mhm.
And then MMA started, and since that, everything was just kind of an accident, you know?
Yeah,
totally
like a good
unplanned.
accident.
Yeah, totally unplanned.
It's like it was almost planned out for you. You just had to
Right.
like find the path.
You're like,
right?
okay, fine.
It's a pretty cool path, though.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
what you've done is pretty awesome. That's probably a good place to stop it because it's been about 2 hours and
Oh, has it really?
yeah,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is totally chill. I mean, we'll go to 3 hours on these sometimes. But yeah, I just wanted to thank you for coming.
Yeah.
This was really fun.
Good, yeah, me too.
Me and my buddies all watched, Ultimate Fighter. I saw that like Stephan Bonner passed away.
Oh, you
Remember?
did?
Yeah, wasn't he on like the first season?
Yeah.
I don't know, but anyways, I think everything you've done is cool, and probably people will be able to get a lot out of this episode.
Yeah, I hope
and
so.
so yeah, I appreciate you being here. Is there anything you want to say? Shout out to anybody before we sign on?
Thank you guys for listening. I don't know what
That's
else.
all good enough.
Terrible
Yeah,
self-promoter, like I said.
like you
so.
said, but that's okay. Thank you for being here, everybody.
Yeah,
thank you guys for listening. We're gonna call it good for tonight, and we will see you next time.